Hi, it's Ileana at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show. And today I have with me Michael Lee Hill. So Michael knows a lot about the ACIO. He knows a lot about sacred geometry, and he's had interesting experiences with UFOs. So we're going to discuss some of those things today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Got my
Excellent.
morning coffee in, so I'm almost awake.
Awesome. And you're a musician. I've heard some of your beautiful music.
Thank
Fantastic.
you. Yeah, it's been my first love, all along. And I guess, because of being on the History Channel show, I found out Eric Clapton is my biological father. So I guess it runs in the family, right? Guitar is my first love, and what really, it's about the only thing that's kept my interest all these years. And so I'm glad you dig it.
Oh, I do. It's I connect to frequency of music on a soul level. And when I hear certain vibrations, I just tune in, and yours is made with love. I can tell that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So you've had interesting experiences. You got to know Dr. Neruda, and you got to visit
Not
the
Neruda.
ACIO.
I would have liked to meet Neruda. I met 15,
Ah,
he went by A.R. Borden in the real world. And yeah, I actually do think I met Neruda, but um, it wasn't, he never told me he was Neruda, but he fit all the details after I met 15. And this gentleman came into my life, and he was a Mayan elder, and he worked for the NSA for remote viewing and reverse engineering for robotics. And he was a genius. And if I had to guess, if I met Neruda, that would be the individual. But
mhm.
15 is the one that brought me into the fold.
And
Glad you even know who these people are. Most people don't.
oh, I've remote viewed ACIO Dr. Neruda in 15. So I'm familiar with the background of it, but I like to get the perspective of the experiencer who was brought into this stuff. So can you tell us what ACIO is, and what was it like meeting 15?
Uh, what was the word? The first one?
ACIO.
ACIO.
Yes.
It's the Alien Contact Interface Organization, and they're the ones that are truly in technology transfer programs with those that are not from here. And AR personally told me that in the 1950s, Eisenhower met with a couple different races of extraterrestrials, and the Anunnaki had told him, listen, we will help you get to unlimited free energy, but you have to get rid of your ambition of nuclear power, because you don't know what you're dealing with. And they told him, listen, we know you're meeting with the Greys, and we're not invaders. We're not going to come and just invade, and we still have time. But we really warn you about partnering with the Greys, because they're, and that's exactly what happened. Is our government, this is right after World War II, so you can see them, because AR told me not only did the Anunnaki meet with them and would help, but it said unlimited free energy, even though it seems like an all positive thing. They made me aware, well, what do you think is going to happen when it's unlimited, it's free, and it's energy? So what do you do with those that would misuse it? And they specifically said, what do you think a person that would stone a woman to death in the middle of their village because she was rumored to be having an affair, what do you think they're going to do with their unlimited free energy? So they told me the idea is, it is Pandora's box, and it can't be released on a planet without great care. And they were willing to help us back in the 50s, but our government looked at it as they would also instill an Anunnaki kingdom here on the planet to oversee, the the unfolding of unlimited free energy. So I asked them, I said, well, what's it going to take to get another offer on the table? You know, because evidently they're right? You know, with Fukushima and whatnot, it's like we truly don't know what we're doing. And I think it also answers a lot of people might know of, you know, these UFOs, these chariots of fire coming down over military installations and turning their nuclear weapons into no-go and actually taking them out of, you know, the air with test flights and whatnot. Well, it was their original message, you know, you don't know what you're dealing with, and we can help you get to unlimited free energy, but we will have to implement it to make sure it's not misused. And instead of partnering in the 50s with the Anunnaki, our government partnered with the Greys, because they didn't give us these stipulations of, you know, they just pretty much gave us whatever we wanted. And then, you know, there was a set number of abductions that could take place, and those numbers started going through the roof. And but I guess the Greys are the highest source of genetic knowledge in, you know, the multiverse. So it's like even the work that they do gets funneled to the Anunnaki eventually. But I asked them, what's it going to take to get another offer on the table? Because obviously we could use their help. And he said, what makes you think that we didn't go into technology transfer programs with them right then and there back in the 50s? But that was the ACIO, and he told me that was more or less the research and development division of the program of reverse engineering, where the Labyrinth group, they called it, was the most secretive, highest level division of the ACIO. And he said that's who was very interested in myself and had brought me into the fold, because we can get into why. But yeah, so I guess that answers it. Interesting though. You know, he told me, you know, just so you know, all of the Labyrinth group are not Anunnaki. Well, he called them Sam. He said, you know, we call it Nibiru. That's not what, that's our name for their planet. Their name is the Sa'amai. And then the people of the Sa'amai are the Sa'am. And then Sa'am translated into the Western language is Sam, Uncle Sam, right?
Yeah.
But so he said, just be aware they're not all Sam. And, you know, that's who's taken an interest in what's unfolding in your life. So I hope that answered your question to what the ACIO is and what the Labyrinth group is. And, you know, A.R. Borden became a real, or 15, became a real father figure to me, because I wasn't getting these answers from anywhere else on the planet, you know. So it was really nice to have someone that was giving me a course of study to allow me to start to process my meeting with my hybrid group, which, you know, when I met the Anunnaki, they said, you know, that I don't want to jump around so much, but I was on the History Channel and they proved this Harvard professor, his name was David Systrom, and in the show Alien Contact of the series UFO Hunters, they proved I didn't have normal human blood. And that's why the Anunnaki first met me, is they said, this blood anomaly that was revealed on the History Channel is truly an indicator that you're of our Nephilim bloodline. And the Nephilim bloodline in the Bible says it's the hybrid bloodline of the Elohim, which is Anunnaki, and the humans. And what's interesting is, I didn't know any of this, but they, you know, that's why they met me. They said these indicators that was revealed. The anomaly in my blood is called an increase of creatine kinase, which brings oxygen to the bloodstream to facilitate healing. So in essence, what I learned it does is the more oxygen you have in your blood, it equates to how much electricity you hold at a cellular level to facilitate healing. So the more oxygen, the more chi or prana or whatever you want to call it. And that's what they told me. These are indicators that I am of their hybrid bloodline. And boy, then the learning really started in earnest, you know?
Mm-hmm. And did you ever get to see the Labyrinth and the ACIO in person? Did they ever take you to the underground labs?
Oh, yes. And I've heard that because my higher self is a being that was known as Inky, which that's not his name, that's a title, just like Dalai Lama, kind of. And also Ia is not a name. It's the oldest word for grandfather in the Native American First Nation is Ia Da. But I said all along, my name's been Michael. How about that? That makes it easy. But you know, at the end of our mission, AR was, you know, he had formed a team of 7 of us that was made to make contact with the Anunnaki or the incoming and to help humanity, because there are some things on the board that were kind of doomsday, worst case scenario endings to the human story for 2012. And for instance, one of them was Hurricane Sandy, and that was being steered into New York by Team Bad Cop, I call them. And also there was an earthquake on the left-hand side of the North American continent, which was called Earthquake Charlotte. And that had created a tsunami that was a 20-foot wall of water that was heading towards Hawaii. And I'm the one personally that brought that event into the team. I'm like, you know, I know we're doing this over here, but are you aware this is happening? So I brought it to the attention of a lot of people because, you know, it's all about, you know, that idea when 2 or more of us come together with a common goal and a common vision, that our manifestation abilities go through the roof. So the more, the merrier, truly. So you'll find both of those events had all the intensity and storm, you know, power taken out of them before they hit New York and before it hit Hawaii. And I can tell you some of this is I still have the tasking instructions and everything from the NSA. And they said, listen, we know you're not weathermen, but we also have confirmed you have a handshake with your counterpart of the Anunnaki. They call it a handshake. And I had a partner within the team that was my partner. And first they confirmed he and I had a handshake, and we were trained to be able to locate and identify each other's like energy signature on a non-physical platform. And once we could do that and they confirmed it, then it was, well, let's see if you have a handshake with the incoming. And they flat out said, if either of these 2 things, we don't get a handshake, you're not going to be part of this team. So they said, we know you have a handshake with the incoming being Inky. And so they said, we're going to give you all the most recent and most accurate data from all the weather satellites and whatnot, and we don't need you to understand it. They told me that, you know, Inky's going to be looking through your eyes. It's almost like you're his iPhone, and they will know what to do with this data. You don't need to know what to do with the data. So I just, you know, but here's the point. All this learning material I received from AR, including these tasking instructions, right at the end of his life, because he passed away in 2013, he said the time for secrecy is over and to release all this information through all of your networks. So I've done that. So for your listeners, you can go to the Facebook groups, Team Inky, and go under the files, and you'll find tons of the learning material that I received from this most secretive group, and also the Linkage Institute, because the Linkage Institute was created by A.R. Borden as an attempt to communicate to the masses responsibly the bigger picture and the best data that it could. And it involved lots of forms of media. Myself, because of being on the History Channel, and Spike TV was doing a show at the time. And, you know, my YouTube page now has over 5 million views. And some of the documentaries I've produced are over, you know, the one on 432, which we can get into. It's called 432 369, A Key to the Universe, I believe. That one's nearing 4 million views. So the Linkage Institute was a big part of him trying to get a larger number of humans to suss up to the table, which is a yearly conference called the Link, or the Linkage Conference, which was a conference held aboard an Anunnaki mothership to discuss things that needed to be discussed. So for instance, also, you know, on these places, one is called The Writing of A.R. Borden as well. And when you go to those file sections, you'll see that I released the minutes I was given by A.R. Borden to their linkage meeting from 2011, because all the things that they talked about in those minutes is what the team and I addressed. But, you know, here's the deal. You know, we sussed up to the table and we asked them for their help. And yeah, we helped, but what I heard was they're like, oh, look at the little kids trying to grab a hold of the steering wheel. But you can't just ask them to solve your problems for you. You have to give them your best case scenario solving of the problem, even if it's like kindergartners, which is what we did, because obviously they have technology we can't even dream of. And some of the technology I learned was these monoliths that Buzz Aldrin has spoken about, that's on one of the moons of Mars, that's truly Anunnaki technology, and they're on all the planets, and it helps tectonic plate movement and electromagnetic field disruption when Nibiru comes through our part of the solar system. It said it worked really well last time. But that was what this mission was that A.R. Borden put us together. I'm proud of it because we truly saved millions of lives. But it's also what causes death. You know, the last time I talked to him, he said, you know, we were successful. We stopped the transhumanists in their depopulation agenda, but we've pissed off the wrong people, was his exact words. And he said, specifically you, Michael, they've not forgotten that you met with Anunnaki Team Bad Cop led by Marduk in New York. And so just be aware they have a direct eye on you. And that led to, actually, are you familiar with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth?
Yes, very much so.
Right on. Well, the seventh tablet, right? The seven lords. That's an Anunnaki council of light and dark. The Indians, I'm Seneca of the Iroquois, and they knew of a chief Yahweh long before the Bible. It's Enlil, by the way. But the seven lords of light and the seven lords of darkness spoken of in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Native American First Nations called them the seven peace chiefs and the seven war chiefs. And it's truly we can get into this, but to help mankind, the Anunnaki started an experiment that had never been tried before, long ago, 27,000 years ago, to make us experience our own mental energy in an accelerated fashion, unbiasedly, light or dark, whatever you put out, you're going to get back tenfold or whatever it is. I heard the amount of intensity of this intelligence acceleration software, which you might, since you're one of the only people that seems to be hip on the subject, that was what AR was, this intelligence acceleration software. He was the first one it was used on, and that's what made him pretty much the smartest person on the planet, and he became a leader of the ACIO and the Labyrinth group, because it made him start to be able to connect the dots. And so that same technology was used on the team, including myself. And I can tell you, they don't use it, what's the word? They're very careful, because there was a 7-member team, and I seen it cause one of the team members to go insane.
Madness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like too much shadow, because all of a sudden that veneer of your waking state consciousness and what's buried down in the unconsciousness is going to be removed. So now, instead of that 27 frames per second of input data from your sensory 5 senses, and they said you could prove this to yourself by taking a strobe light, and it's going to be flashing, right? And you're increasing the rate of flash, but at a certain point, it's going to turn to a solid white light. Well, that's 27 frames per second. Our waking state consciousness cannot perceive more than 27 frames to bring in all the data that we call reality. But they know people can go under hypnosis. There's millions of bits of information that are recorded into the unconscious. And so what happens is the governor is removed between your waking state. And when it's not all, they said, it's not like you just get rushed with this massive library of data, because it'd probably blow your brain out, and not be able to handle it. But it's kind of like a need to know basis. When you look for something, you'll hit the Akashic records, and things that are needed for you to understand what your query is will be brought forth. But here's the problem is a lot of our shadow work, the inner child, wounded child, is buried deep in the human unconsciousness. So all the stuff that you've buried away that you really don't want to deal with, comes rushing to the surface as well. So, they're very careful with this. And matter of fact, they said that they use a more advanced version, because, by the way, all of humanity is under, we'll call it 1.0 version, and it's transmitted from the moon. I know this is some out there info, but what I'm here for, I guess. It's being broadcast from the moon, and it's varying, like almost pulsing with intensity. The most intensity that you're going to experience from this intelligence acceleration software is when it's a full moon. That's why people go a little crazy and they get a little wacky, because their inner belief system, and actually the more fear-based stuff, gets flushed to the surface during a full moon. So it's almost intuitive, because you would think when it's that's all light. Well, it's not. It's like when the moon is totally dark, we're at the calmest waters of this intelligence acceleration software. But it is, if you look at the moon phases, then it's varying degrees of light and dark until it's a full moon or it's a full dark moon. So that's unknown of at this point, but they said the team, including myself, they used the more advanced version. And they said, because if you haven't started to do your own spiritual homework and weed the fear and doubt and BS out of your own belief system, the more accelerated version would cause damage, because there's too much information, like in a compartmentalized mind, so to speak. So they said it's kind of like when you take an ice cube, and how guys will take a chainsaw and make a beautiful swan out of it. Well, if that ice is frozen too hard, it'll just shatter. But if it started to melt, and then you can take a chainsaw to it, and it won't shatter. You can mold something beautiful out of it. They said similarly, it was the same way with this artificial intelligence software and they asked me, by the way, when they're done, they said, do you think we should use this technology on everyone? And I said, no. First of all, if we've made it through the gate into the age of Aquarius, because when I met the Anunnaki, they said their succession of kingship and how they relate to mankind was totally based on the precessional cycle, and the exit out of the age of Pisces and the entry into the age of Aquarius. That's why Aquarius was always looked at as this new golden age and a time that mankind would flourish. And the Anunnaki told me that the second, which was in December 21st, 2016, not 2012, the very second we entered the age of Aquarius, this experiment to accelerate human conscious evolution by making us experience our own mental energy in an accelerated fashion, it will be done and over with the very second we entered. So the fact that you and I are talking right now is a good sign, because we came very close to not making it. And it deals with that council. That's what I was saying of, I was brought before that council. And it's not for the meek of heart. The dark side is very tricky at getting you to stay in their matrix. And, Chief Yahweh, Enlil, my brother, he told me the trickiest way they get you to stay in their matrix is through love and compassion. It's interesting. Have you seen the new Matrix movie?
I've seen snippets of it, but it's about how do you perceive your reality, perception of the world.
Indeed. What's interesting is Trinity in the movie, the reality is she's in a pod, just like Neo was. And what she's experiencing as her everyday 3D reality is not reality. And so to keep her from truly regaining her power, they created a Matrix daughter for her. And they used her daughter to keep her in the Matrix. And at the end, she figures out truly what's going on. And she goes to the bad guy and she's like, kicks him in the head, says, here's for using children, against us, you sons of bitches, So I thought that was very interesting, because that's what I experienced is they use love and compassion against myself to try to get me to enter their territory. And it almost worked. There was a grandmother that saved the day and pretty much ran an interference. She stopped me from entering, and she man, it's a long story. But how long is this interview, by the way?
However you want it to be.
Oh, good. They will try to trick you into giving your energy, your I am, your sovereignty away to illusionary outside sources, because that's what's one side of that council. 7 lords of light, 7 lords of darkness. 7 lords of darkness are going to dangle dark carrots in front of you to see if they can get you to bite, because their viewpoint that they're going to report back to the king is that all humans will give their energy and their I am away to illusionary outside sources. We always do. We misuse our power over others and ourselves. And I can't say they're real wrong, you know what I mean? But the light is going to almost the flip side of that, because when I was brought before that council, Chief Yahweh, the Sundance chief, I'm sure you know what a Sundance is.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought into Sundance where this all took place. And he said, Michael, this is all about self-inflicted suffering, that it doesn't happen unless you give it approval. And that's what he said, what you experienced, because what happened was the head of the Dark Council, he very much set me up to fail, and actually told me he was. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, I can't tell you that because it take away from the energy. Here he had a dream, a vision, and in it, I entered the circle, their matrix, their designated area, because one of my friends that was sundancing for the first time, they go for 4 days without food or water. He had collapsed in this dream, and that's what drew me in. I was going to throw him over my shoulder and take him to the hospital, but instead, in the vision, I ended up being pierced and hanging from the cross or the tree, whatever you want to call it, myself. So what they did at this, when I was brought before this council, is Team Bad Cop went to one of my friends that was sundancing for the first time in reality and said, hey, would you fake passing out? We need you to fake passing out. He said, oh, okay. And he did. And it almost worked, but think about what I'm telling you. I was responding to total illusion as if it was reality. They're very good at that. They're very good at making things appear as what they're not. But that's only Team Bad Cop. And like I said, a grandmother saved the day, because I was going in, I was going to throw him over because what happened is, my friend, like a dumbass, was like, well, okay, I'll fake passing out. And he did. And after about 10 minutes of laying there looking lifeless, the other Sundancers went and grabbed him and was going to pull him to the pole. There's a tree involved in the Sundance, and they were going to tie him to it. And I had a panic attack. I already knew. I had already talked to the Sundance chief and learned none of this is necessary. It's, actually he said, this is going to piss some of them off, but he said, Spirit's so glad you did not enter the dark matrix or territory, because Spirit looks at anyone who participates in these blood sacrifice ceremonies as prostitutes. They're, for some favor that they think, by showing God how much they care by inflicting suffering upon themselves and others. They're very tricky. But then, what I found very interesting is, the seven lords of light. If the dark it's all about self-inflicted suffering through your own free will, the light is all about what kind of love and compassion to any suffering that comes your way. So the flip side of that. So, that whole thing of, angels may come into your awareness as the homeless or someone that needs, they're going to see how you respond to any, suffering that comes your way. But what happened was, before that council, I seen some of my close friends sundancing for the first time, and it was brutally hot. It was like 100 degrees every day. And so after the second day, I prayed for rain out loud. And I found out afterwards, the Sundance chief said, you don't know what you did, but there's Illuminati mind control to never pray for rain. They believe, the people participating believe, that you need to suffer as much as possible, and that you need to be as hot as possible. So you never pray for rain. But, the one that does pray for rain, not only did you show you didn't succumb to the mind control, but you showed enough love and compassion for your fellow brothers and sisters by trying to alleviate their suffering, that you no longer have to go through the seven lords of light testing. You get a free pass through. And what they said, what I was told, is the last person that did this before, I was deemed eagle, rainbow. We'll get into those, what they truly mean. But it was King Solomon. And if you remember, after King Solomon, was vetted and he was a clean vessel, the dark had to do his bidding. And it was said that the demons, built King Solomon's temple because he was given a ring that controlled them. And in the same way, they said, if I wouldn't have completed the test, we would have got the doom and gloom into this, because someone's got to do it. And if anyone can do it, all of us can do it, because we're all one. So all it takes is one person to not succumb to their trickery, and they were very tricky. Matter of fact, I went to my friend who faked passing out. I'm still trying to process this. I'm like, I don't think you really understand what you almost did. But you just arbitrarily okay, I'll fake passing out. You almost tricked me into it, and then it would have ended horribly for mankind. And I said, do you know this? And he kind of laughed, and he said, yeah, I almost got you, didn't I? Well, that goes from him just being an arbitrary participant to he knew what he was doing. That's a little weird. And he was very close to Chief Yahweh. And these people around him, people think, oh yeah, he met the inner circle of the Anunnaki. I'm telling you, they've proven to myself who they are by one of the grandmothers at the Sundance pulled up in her minivan and said, would I go for a ride with her? I said, sure. I get in her minivan and she said, I want to talk to you about how our bloodline entered the North American continent and got intertwined with the Native American First Nations. She said, but wouldn't it be good if I had a map of the United States to show you on? So next thing I know, she goes like this over her inside of her minivan window, and a map of the United States showed up out of nowhere. It looked like a Star Wars computer 3D holographic map that was all red, and it was just floating in between her and her minivan window. And I'm seeing it, and she looks at me, and the next thing she said, she goes, I know you can see it. Yep, it's right there. So she proceeded to use that map to show me the Sangreal, Holy Grail, Anunnaki human hybrid bloodline migration into the North American continent. So things like that, and through Chief being Enlil, he's proven over and over again. And what I found very fascinating is the elders, they know they're Anunnaki hybrids. They know that they're the Elohim or the Anunnaki or the wing makers, but people need to understand not all of the Anunnaki family tree are Pleiadian or wing maker. My side of the family, my mother is Pleiadian. And so half of the family tree on my side of the family is half Syrian or Anunnaki and half Pleiadian, which I find funny, not very funny, but a lot of people seem to throw the Anunnaki under the proverbial bus to the ones that are behind all the problems and all the secret societies and the skull and bones and the oppression and suppression of the human, the whole human race. And but then in the same breath, they'll go, oh, the Pleiadians are so evolved and they're so awesome. I'm like, man, half the Anunnaki are Pleiadian. You don't seem to know this, but not you, but the proverbial you. So the wing makers are part of the Anunnaki, but they show up on the Inky side because Inky or Ea or Mikiel, said actually, this is unknown. Well, they said it's truly Archangel Mikiel or Michael. They said that was my name long before. And by the way, so at one of these Star Knowledge conferences that Chief Golden Light Eagle put on, where all the elders would come and teach and give presentations, they recognized me as Saint Michael. And that was very odd to me because that's not my bag. I've been agnostic most of my life, so I'm like, what? But sure enough, they gave me back a crystal. It's not a sword, but they called it's the Earth 3D representation of Archangel Michael's sword of truth. But this is like a dagger, and it's made of crystal, and they said it was made of the same material as the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, which I've began work with, and we can talk about that. But they said it's sound. So I don't know if you know the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. Hewlett-Packard took it in the 70s, and under their microscopes, because Hewlett-Packard is one of the leaders in using quartz crystal specifically in computers and whatnot. So they wanted to take a look at this thing, and under their microscopes, they could find no
striations, smooth.
No tool marks. Yeah, exactly. And they said this thing shouldn't exist because the idea that someone polished it into that shape, that's one of the hardest materials on the planet, and it would take millions of years for, even if you just passed it along for lifetimes to polish that thing. But it's interesting in that as well because I've began doing a lot of work with it. I'm talking in the physical, and I brought it to East Lake, Ohio, because there's a Native American First Nation mound site that is unknown to the world right now, and it's one of the Hall of Records. This mound site takes over a mile to walk around it, and some of the artifacts that were removed tie that location to ancient Sumer, which in particular, one of the artifacts has what's called the morning star. That's that four-pointed star, like a compass. But it goes back to Sumer. If you recall, there's a picture of Enki holding out a sphere, and he's got that four-pointed star. And I had known it was in those artifacts because I was contacted by a guy from the Smithsonian saying, I'm really happy you're traced the mound builder bloodline to East Lake, Ohio, because he was one of the ones that was part of a small excavation in the 1970s. And some of those artifacts are still at the East Lake Indian Museum. That's actually just in the back of a strip mall, like in the bottom, like no one even knows it's there. Well, sure enough, I went, and there those artifacts are. And one of the artifacts is the Morning Star. So I brought the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull there in 2020 to unlock that site and all of the hidden history. There's a lot that has been hidden from mankind. And so I'm proud to be a bringer of the apocalypse. The apocalypse, I know a lot of people think it's something scary, but it truly means the revealing of what was once hidden, or the unveiling. And so I'm proud to be a bringer of the apocalypse. And there's a lot more of that we can get into, because there's brand new mound builder artifacts called the Michigan artifacts. People can Google that, find out a little info. There's not a whole lot out there right now, but I was gifted Zachariah Sitchin's flash drive by his personal assistant and filmographer. And this is what Zachariah Sitchin was interested in at the time of his passing. And lo and behold, he was tracing the Anunnaki human hybrid bloodline into the North American First Nation culture. And he had these artifacts, which are known as the Michigan artifacts. But I didn't know that. Right here's the actual, this is the flash drive, So all I got was a flash drive. He's passed on now. So all I seen was these artifacts. It took me a little bit of work to figure out what these were. Lo and behold, it's the Michigan artifacts. And what was very interesting is in one of those tablets, some of them are written in ancient Hebrew. So first of all, why is that in North America, in Ohio, in Michigan, But some of the other tablets are ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And then some of them are pictorial. It's almost like a picture book, and then there's words. Well, since it's ancient Hebrew, they're able to be transcribed. So I took a deep dive, because this has kind of been thrown in my lap to share with mankind. And one of the translations blew my mind, because it was all about the Sundance and what I learned there, and very much in detail as well. So that blew my mind. I was like, wow, the same bed of information is going to come through me in 2016. And this is what I learned from Chief Yahweh, what's truly going on there. And part of it was really wild, is the last 7,000 years has been under control of what the tablets call the Dark Messiah. And he was the one that had the job of reporting back to the king humanity's worst behavior, over and over, like, look, because part of the Anunnaki family just, they thought we would never rise up into our sovereignty, and I am. And, we'd always bite the dark carrot, as I said, whereas some of us, including myself as Enki, was like, well, of course, if you judge, I don't know if that's the right word, but you're judging mankind when we've been under the thumb of this Team Bad Cop, and we've been oppressed, suppressed, that's not fair. It's like we're having our hands tied behind our back. Truly give mankind a chance to show our potential, and we can do better, and do it without then that's fair, I think, But I guess that's where we're at right now in humanity. But these Michigan artifacts is going to change the planet. They're very, very interesting, because that's 6,000 years ago. you find out, the first 10 commandments ever was found in Newark, Ohio, out of the Newark earthworks. There's been many ancient Hebrew artifacts that have been removed from mounds around the Great Lakes. This throws history upside down because truly, and A.R. Borton, 15, he said that these mound sites is going to be proof in the future of the Anunnaki being in North America. Like Serpent Mound, he brought up in particular that it would be proof. But that's interesting because Chief Golden Light Eagle began bringing me at his side. This is Enlil, and I'm Inky, People will say of this feud he and I had, but man, there's much brotherly love flowing at the end. And I cherish the time. When I brought in the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull to do the ceremony at this unknown Hall of Records mound site, I brought himself with the skull. And it was very interesting because he knew, he knew times were changing. I'll just leave it at that. And he walked up to me. He goes, do you want me in my regalia? Do you want me? Yeah, of course. But I thought it was sweet that he even asked me. Yeah. So are you Native American? Not that it even matters. We're all here in part of it. Are you just
I had ancestry gene testing done. No, zero Native American, purely Russian, Polish. So that's the main thing, Ukrainian. The Balkans, but I've had past lives as Native American shaman. So I deeply connect to the roots of the teachings.
Well, the fact of the matter is some of the bloodline very long ago, from Erie, they, instead of people from Erie or the Erie-ish, it became Irie, the Irish. So, you'll find people wouldn't think of people that have Irish blood to be part of Native American First Nation, but it is so. That's why also you'll find a lot of similarity between the Irish, like Celtic, and like Iroquois.
Yeah, my teacher was Métis, and I just remember making the rattle, the talking stick, and some other things. And it's just so beautiful. The knowledge is there, how to make the tools.
What was interesting to me is I was adopted. So growing up until I was on the History Channel and they found the blood anomaly. So the Harvard professor was like, well, if you can contact your biological parents, you should, to see if this is something hereditary. So for the first time in my life, I tracked down my birth mother and my two sisters and got to meet them. I'm close with all of them now. And that's also when I found out Eric Clapton is my birth father or biological father. But up until then, I had no idea of my heritage. People go, dude, you're Italian, look at you. But so for the first time, I found out I was Seneca, almost pure blood on my mother's side. And so the thought occurred to me, man, wouldn't it be cool? Because I was having contact with whatever, these UFOs over Lake Erie. And I started to find out, well, Native American Indians seem to have contact with what they call star beings. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to meet them and learn from them? But then again, I'm thinking, well, how the hell is that going to happen? I'm like an instant Indian, and how am I going to meet these elders and stuff? To me, I'm just some white guy, But then I was brought in to speak at a conference called Angels and Aliens. And Chief Golden Light Eagle was the keynote speaker. And people that don't know who Chief Golden Light Eagle is, he's been on Ancient Aliens many times, but he's also the Sundance Chief. And like I told you, like when the veil dropped and I told them I would not participate in any of the blood sacrifice ceremony parts of that. And, that's when the veil dropped. And he said, Michael, I I work with the 7 Lords of Light and the 7 Lords of Darkness. I'm the only one who sits in the middle and has a seat on both sides, and both light and dark. He's the only member of that council that holds a seat, a chair on both sides. So after that is when I found out that the Cherokee and the Iroquois knew of this Chief Yahweh long before the Bible. And this Chief Yahweh was said to be the one that sat in the middle, directly in the middle of these 2 councils of war and peace chiefs. And he's the only one who had a seat on both sides. And so I'm like, wait a minute, this is exactly what Chief told me. So the next time me and Chief were together, this is, let me think. It's probably 2017. We were both in a vehicle together, and I said, Chief, this is awkward, but Spirit's leading me to the knowledge that you are Enlil, Yahweh, my brother. And he said, yes, I've done some pretty messed up things. Those are his first words to me. And I've never asked him what those messed up things were because I didn't really want to know. But he said, but no one knows who Yahweh or Enlil is anymore. So I just go by Chief. And so from 2017 until 2020, when he passed, when he dropped his robe, we communicated from that level of understanding that he knew I am Michael Ia Inki and he is Enlil. And I learned a lot from him, he was one of the funniest people I've met. People wouldn't think that of Enlil being, he could just have a whole room of like 500 people in stitches and just crying with tears. He was so funny. And, but he just, put it this way, he's the only one that had to come from both sides. He could come from the dark or he could come from the light, the main trickster. And, I've seen it many times. If you came before him with a stupid idea, well, go ahead. I seen a gentleman at the Sundance. He had a vision that he hung from the tree for 4 days, and after he was granted eagle status. And eagle status to the Native American First Nations is kind of like Christ consciousness. It's they wouldn't call it Christ consciousness, so it's called eagle status because the eagle is the only bird that flies above the storm. It doesn't seek shelter under the storm, and it flies above it, and it gets, the bird's eye view, the big picture of everything more so. So that's eagle status, but also after, and I don't pat myself on the back too much because it just took caring. But after the veil dropped and Chief told me what exactly is going on, one of the grandmothers sat down with me, and guess what? Her name was Grandmother Morningstar. Imagine that, right? She's the one that made the map appear as well, by the way. She said, Michael, again, some of this stuff is weird for me to discuss because it reeks of ego, but it is what it is, and it happened. And, they told me, it's not bragging if it actually happened, and you did it. The grandmother said, Michael, you are the rainbow we've been waiting for. And she said that to those of them that have the gift of sight, that I've become the whirling rainbow. And this gets into the Hopi prophecy of the whirling rainbow prophecy or the rainbow warrior prophecy. She said that every chakra, the 7 main chakras that we know of, that are the main points of entry of energy into the human body. And she told me that every chakra emits light, from red in the root to purple in the crown, but only when they're free and balanced and spinning freely. She said the Merkaba shape, that Star of David, double tetrahedron, spins one clockwise, one counterclockwise. But if they're inundated with lower frequency thought forms, such as fear or doubt or nonsense, it slows the rate of speed and then they don't emit light. That only when it's spinning freely and has been cleared do the human chakras emit the colors of the rainbow. So I like this analogy. So that's, by the way, they gave me the name Rainbow Warrior Eagle, which truly eagle and rainbow are almost the same exact thing, that you've proven that you have clean chakras. And guess what, man? There's no superiority in that, because anyone can become rainbow. Doesn't matter whether you're male, female, no matter what race you are, no matter what, everyone can clear your own chakras. And what they told me is why this is important. You know, LERM, right? From the wing makers, the light encoded reality matrix. Mm-hmm. It's the ability to manifest physical timelines and physical objects from the ether, you know, something from nothing. And that is only granted to the human once you've been deemed rainbow by spirit. Because let's just take, and so there's 7 chakras. Picture that as a 7-pointed star, and every point of the star is illuminated with one of the colors of the rainbow. But let's just say, for instance, you've got 6 of your 7 chakras all clean, but that 7th chakra is dark. You still got some spiritual homework to do to clear it. And let's just say it's your root chakra. So that's survival, you know, that's, so you're in your life, you're experiencing all kinds of fight or flight, you know, not being able to keep a roof over your head, not being able to keep a job, you know, so that chakra is all dark. And all of a sudden, if spirit granted you all this extra manifestation ability, more than likely, you're just going to go to what you have a energetic fear signature stamp on and manifest the crap out of it. And it's not going to end well, you know? So what they said, well, spirit is smarter than that. No one, you know, Chief Blue Star Eagle, who is Chief Golden Light Eagle's brother here in the physical world, and he was King Nanar here in this physical human meat suit, and he was part of my naming ceremony. And he said, now that you've been, he said that you've been granted your spiritual name by the Eagle Nation, which is Enlils. You know, they vet, and, you know, if you're given the clean stamp, you know, a clean vessel, that now when I pray under my name, Rainbow Warrior, which was given by the Eagle Nation, my prayers will go to source with great enthusiasm. And so that only happens. Your prayers only go to source with great enthusiasm once you've done your spiritual homework and weeded out the fear and doubt and get your chakras shining, you know, light yourself up. So
it's like
I like this.
It's like the rainbow body bridge.
Yes, the Tibetans, right?
Yes.
The exact same thing. They call it the rainbow body. And yeah, I find it very fascinating. And he told me too, you know, it's important to be granted, by the way, too, you know, the plumed serpent. Well, someone of the serpent clan, which is Inky, is granted eagle status by the Inlo. Well, that's the feathered serpent. Quetzalcoatl. It's, you know, it's a different way of saying someone that has been given eagle status by the Enlil side to someone of the serpent clan. And so interesting times. But man, he passed, and I miss him. And so there's more to the story that people don't know. And he had to change a tune at the end because, you know, all he had been given was humanity's worst case scenario. So I represented mankind before that council by becoming mankind, walk a mile in their moccasins. And to do that, you can't be at any higher level of frequency than the normal human. And that is actually verifiable by how much electricity you're holding at a cellular level. A human without any modification, if can hold about 2 volts of electricity per cell. But that's if you're really in good shape and you're like an athlete. And for us, it's almost like they said, we'll up your creatine kinase level so you can have these higher levels of chi and but you could still eat pizza and drink beer, you know.
Mhm.
But so the creatine kinase, it upped my electrical capacitance is about 1.6 of the bloodline, because what they found was when the Inky side chose to represent mankind before the council, when they incarnated into the human genome, the normal human genome was not capable of holding their energetic level. So we would end up spontaneously combusting, bursting into flames. So no matter how much you want to help, bursting into flames is not a good experience. So they said, well, what if we created an offshoot of the human genome that would have a bigger pool of chi or prana available at a cellular level? And they said a lot of people might be of the bloodline on the planet, but many of us are not, we're not taught how to use chi or energy. So it just lies dormant. But it's interesting stuff.
And when the chi awakens, it's so hot. You feel like it's tingling and the kundalini is spinning in your body, and you're like, am I going crazy? No, your chi and your prana are awakening, and you need to start balancing that with your chakras.
It feels beautiful. It's I've heard people call it sexual, but it's not even an earthly sexual.
No.
It's like sexual energy that's cosmic. You know, it has nothing to do with male or female. It has to do with life force.
Yeah, it's hot. It's like, and you feel like you're on fire. It's like the sun dance, but you have to balance the polarities and the energies and all the points and the meridians and the auric field. It's like you have to balance everything that exists within you.
You know what I can share with you is, this is even from Chief Golden Light Eagle, you know, Chief Yahweh. He said that the Sundance will be morphing into even a more, because you know what, the fact of the matter is, I learned the most I ever learned about giving your energy away to illusionary outside sources at the Sundance. And I started to look at ways I was giving it away in my own life, because as he said, he could tell it was really bothering me, because some of the larger gentlemen get pierced through the back, as you know, and then it connects to giant buffalo skulls. And you could see it was really bothering me. He said, Michael, just remember, there's a million ways to pull those buffalo skulls behind yourself. There's a million ways to give your energy and your I am away to illusionary outside sources. That's only one. And I got it, you know, I was like, wow, you know, because there are a million ways you can give your energy and your I am away to illusionary outside sources. You know, say my girlfriend went, hey, you look pretty fat today. For the next week, I feel like shit because, oh, I'm fat. You know, well, truly, you've given your energy away to an illusionary outside source. And that never happened to me, even though I am fat. I'm just using, I'm not fat, I'm big boned. But there are a million ways to give it away, you know, and I started to take the energy back and be very careful about giving it away to illusionary outside sources. But he has told people that the Sundance is going to evolve and morph into something even more beautiful, and that is the moon dance. And the moon dance would evolve to bring back the feminine and bring it into balance. And not only that, you know, it's very important right now to show the moon we love her, because there's things happening in the future which deal with Comet Apophis. And this is the comet that Elon Musk has already talked about. And it's pretty fear-based, man. You gotta, you know I have some friends at Hewlett-Packard, not Hewlett-Packard, Lockheed Martin, totally different company, that have already sent craft to Comet Apophis, because everything is saying it's gonna have impact here on this planet in 2036. I think it's interesting with movies like Greenland, and now that new Don't Look Up. It's all about comet impact. And this is going to be told to the planet here soon, because in 2029, it's going to come between the Earth and the moon. And that's not too far away, 2029. It's not going to be debatable. Everyone's going to know. And God, you think the circumstances that caused us to have a toilet paper shortage, we're going to be having some serious toilet paper shortages. But I'm sitting next to, Chief Yahweh at a conference, and he announces, Spirit's given the Indian elders permission to reveal that the celestial object, Comet Apophis, would be coming into our solar system, but there's prophecy that the moon will take the hit and take the strike. And he mentioned some of even Hollywood movies like The Time Machine. And when he goes into the future, the moon is cracked in 3 pieces. But there's a whole third option, which is a second moon is being flown in, just like the first one was. The moon we have, some people are hip to it, but it's not what we think it is. It's hollow.
There's going to be a wave tractor beam that will pull Apophis out and it'll bypass Earth, will not hit Earth.
What I've been told is yes, but it's not going to bypass Earth. It's going to be captured in that wave and slowly released into its new orbit, and we'll have 2 moons that totally super regulate the waters and the weather systems on this planet. And this planet will become a paradise like we can't even imagine. But these are 3 different timelines or options. And I can, thoughts create reality. If people believe what's going to be forced down their throat by Fox News of Comet Apophis, and they put their energy into that, I'm not so sure. Chief Golden Light Eagle said people need to know if they don't change their ways and get away from materialistic, like how we are so materialistic and we're poisoning the waters and the air from pollution and not even caring because we're more interested in oil, and he said, he told me, he said, prayer can change anything. And he said, yes, you're right, Michael, because I brought up with him the work I did with 15 with A.R. Borden. I said, listen, if 7 of us could take the energy out of a hurricane and take the energy out of a tsunami created by earthquake Charlotte, imagine what 70 of us could do. Or 700 of us, or 7,000, or 70,000. You see what I'm getting at? And I said, he said, Michael, you're right. He said, prayer can change anything. And he brought up an example. He said in the 1990s, Yellowstone was going to erupt, which is a super volcano. And it would have been catastrophic to humanity, unlike anything we could even imagine. The last time it erupted, chunks of it that were the sizes of buses were thrown like into other states. It would have been horrific. He said they went to Spirit in a sweat lodge, and Spirit came in and they said, is there anything that can be done? Because we know Yellowstone is about to erupt. And they said, we can create and we can stop. And they helped us back in 1990s to stop this super volcano. But so he used this as an example, but he said people need to know if they don't change their ways and their thinking of not being, we need to appreciate nature, that we're part of it and we're in a symbiotic relationship with it, then this is on the chalkboard for humanity, that Comet Apophis will strike. And we have some homework to do of, and that's what the moon dance is all about, of us showing the moon and putting all this energy, not into materialistic things and hoping our wallets grow. It's showing the moon. We don't want you to have to do that. And let's bring in option 3, and I guess that's what I'm here to do as well, because when all this breaks in the future, I don't like to talk about it a lot because it's a lot of fear. But when it does break, I can go back and go, listen, look back at some of the things I've already released.
Yeah, because I have precognition abilities. So what I'm seeing, there's going to be 3 golden rays of circular light that comes in to hold Apophis so it doesn't hit the Earth. It's like tractor beams, frequencies, rings of light 3 to hold it in and bypass Earth,
Kind of
bypass the moon.
anti-gravity web.
Yes. There's going to be 3 circular beams coming in to hold it. So it doesn't hit the Earth or the moon, because if it hits the moon, chunks of the moon are going to hit Earth, and it's going to
Yes.
cause an apocalyptic darkness. It's going to
Yeah.
be the dark age.
Yeah,
So
it would be
it's
horrible.
going to be
Survivable is better than option A of it
yeah.
actually striking the
Yeah.
planet.
Option A and B is not A, not B is good, because still even B would cause a lot of damage to the Earth. Half of it would be gone. Half of the Earth would be gone. So this anti-grav, it's like 3 rings of light, literally energy force holding it in and moving it. So it's gonna not hit the Earth, not hit the moon, but it's gonna be close. It's gonna be moved out of the frequency Earth and moon. So it's not gonna be in orbit around either, but close.
Indeed, that's exactly. I'm all about option 3. You know, and that's what the whole new moon dance is, and it very well be. You know, everyone's talking about a global reset of like an economic system. Imagine if all of the planet is freed the moon dance. That's our job. You know, all of your debts will be taken care of, your sustenance, your well-being, because there's enough wealth on this planet there's no reason ever that any of us went hungry or didn't have a house when, you know, we got billionaires sending themselves into space for 10 minutes, you know, for $400 million or $1 billion, whatever it was.
Yeah.
We can do better, you know, and
Yes.
so from what I understand, King Solomon's treasure and the Templar treasure, it's still on this planet, and it's because it's here to help free mankind from the Federal Reserve, actually from that economic slavery system that we've been under. That gets into this dark bard, or dark messiah, as these tablets called him, said that he was in charge for the last 7,000 years. And this dark one at the Sundance told me, I've incarnated, I'm the bard. And he said the bard is in charge of going out into the kingdom and collecting the state of the kingdom, because the king doesn't have time for all the nuances of the state of the kingdom. He needs to put into a Shakespearean short story to report back of what's going on. And he said that if you look at the Mayan calendar, there's, you know, matriarchy times and patriarchy. Matriarchy in like times of Egypt, mankind flourished, which is, you know, when females are in charge, and we do well. But then when us males take over, things take a left turn, and wars enter and everything else. So dark ages, light ages, dark ages, light ages. Now the Mayan calendar calls them days and nights, and that it's almost like Team Good Cop and Team Bad Cop get their time to report back their picture. And there's always 7 days and 6 nights. So there's always one more day of light, but that doesn't come if at the end of the 6th night, if no human has stood up and didn't take the dark carrot, then the day can't come unless someone has got past the vetting of the council. And at that time, it was very weird, because after it had happened, this individual, which I now know is the Dark Bard or the Dark Messiah, he was visibly upset that he didn't trick me. And he came up to me, he said, with a lot of venom in his voice, he said, "We would have had you if you didn't have that mutated blood." And I was like, well, okay, you know. But he also told me that now, since he wasn't able to get me or to trick me into their territory, that he was being imprisoned, and that you could look at it as a form of death. None of this made any sense to me at this time, by the way. That his waking state, ego part of his consciousness that was male, he had a twin female aspect, and his male component would be imprisoned for 1,000 years, and his female component would rise. I'm thinking, well, this is some crazy shit, excuse my language, but none of it made any sense. Now I find these Michigan artifacts, and sure enough, it says that, this chief Yahweh or Enlil created this council, and that this evil, dark Messiah had been at, his reign had been over the last 7,000 years. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is exactly what the Dark Bard had told me. And again, it said that if they call it the good Messiah, and I guess that would be me, even though, man, I don't like any terms of hierarchy. I'm really starting to understand, even though, like I said, I was agnostic most of my life, but, I do know Jesus said, don't put me on a pedestal. These things I do, one day you'll do an even greater. He wasn't, I don't put myself over anyone on this planet. Even if you're homeless and don't have a penny to rub together, you're still a divine being having a physical experience. I don't, and matter of fact, the Anunnaki really stressed to me to remember that the acorn is no less significant than the giant oak it will one day become in the Creator's eyes. That we all go through these phases of evolution from actually simple cell life all the way up to where we're at now, and we'll even go higher from here, but I'm looking forward to bringing the moon dance, because music, right? And we can get into some of this too, because it all leads to some things. I was just part of a recent mission from NASA. I mean, who would have thought, But it was Richard Hoagland. Do you know who Richard Hoagland is?
Yes.
Matter of fact, because of what's happening, he just contacted me and said, will you come back on my show this Saturday? Because he had formed a team, because a radio astronomer had been getting information. It's almost like the movie Contact, right, with Jodie Foster, that through this big telescope array in New Mexico, they started receiving information, and it was on 432 megahertz, and also 144,000 megahertz. And 144 and 432 are part of the cosmic harmonious frequencies that A.R. Borden 15 told me. That's what I was there to learn, and he said to create matter, learn, right? He said that not only do you need specific frequencies, but you need specific frequencies and specific combinations. And he said I would learn this in my course of study, and I ended up being guided by the Anunnaki using crop circles. And not only that, but telepathic communication. And what happened was, a couple of years ago, I was contacted by Richard Hoagland, and someone had turned him on to a radio interview I did with Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. And he said, Michael, I want you to come on my show because we know that your story sounds batshit crazy to a lot of other people, but NASA has been looking into how energy works and flows multidimensionally for a very long time. He calls it hyperdimensional physics. So he said, I want to arrange for NASA to look into your crystal creations that encode. Stupidly, I do not have one of the discs here, but this is the image. I hired scientists because I started being guided into these cosmic harmonious frequencies. So being a musician, I hired the scientists at Cymoscope, which are the leaders in cymatic technology, which is a new science of making frequency visible for the very first time. And I, in my studio, recorded 20 seconds of me hitting my guitar's A note, but I was just very meticulous about making sure it was tuned properly. There's nothing fancy, right? It was just bow, bow, bow. Sent them 20 seconds of that. Well, the scientists freaked out. They said, we've used this technology to image everything, every frequency known to mankind, to imaging dolphin noises, to even baby noises. They can image anything to see this cymatic. What it is a big, people might have seen where you take a big metal plate and they put sand on it. Then you take a bow and, you know, watch the sand dance and geometry forms.
Mhm.
It's not random. Every time you hit specific frequencies, specific geometry is formed. Well, that's now evolved to where they have a big vat of water and it's in a tripod, so no extra vibrations can get in there. And then they can pump frequency through that water container. Interesting, because all of this led to, well, first of all, this was what the scientists seen and we're so excited about. They said, we've used this technology to image everything, but we've never seen this kind of complexity or dimensionality in anything we've ever imaged. And they said they found out it's encoding all 5 platonic solids, but it's also encoding the Fibonacci, the golden mean spiral. And it's the first time ever that an actual vector equilibrium or toroidal physics, a toroid is like, well, I'll just show you.
Mhm.
That's the actual image. This is not computer generated. It's not, so you see that little donut in there?
Yes.
That is opening a portal through the
Mhm.
fabric of space-time that brings through energy. And what NASA found is they tested water. And what they would do is take municipal tap water. They actually tested 3 different kinds of water. One was municipal tap water, one was spring water from Canada, and then one was Nevian bottled water.
I'm the girl who drinks the spring water from Hope Springs only because that's the cleanest water in all of Canada.
Smart, good for you. I can tell you though, yes, because seeing what they did is take these different spring waters and municipal tap water, and under their, it's almost like Curian photography, which can film
Brilliant.
photonic light energy. Yeah. They have an offshoot of that called GDV, and it uses what's called a bio well, which is the most scientific advanced technique right now that they have. But this offshoot will look at the photonic light energy within a droplet of water for NASA to see how much energy is within water. Well, municipal tap water is almost dead. It's just a little tiny pinprick of light that because we've killed it. We've chlorine and fluoride and running water down long miles of pipe and then making it take right-hand turns. Water is alive and has memory, and we're killing our water. And,
Yes.
And the water we drink brings the chi and the prana into your body. We're 70 to 90% water. So if you're drinking dead water, it's why most of us that are drinking municipal tap water, you get ill and you die when you're 60 or 70, because it's not really illness, it's dehydration. No matter how much of that water you drink, you can't drink enough. But when you see, well, here, check this out. This is their NASA's GDV photography of the municipal tap water. Now, like I said, in your third eye, I don't have the photograph here, but it just looks like a little tiny pinprick of light. But this is not a tiny pinprick of light anymore. That looks like a supernova went off in the droplet of water.
Yeah.
And this was the after effect. But what I can tell you is for Canadian spring water, it was way more healthy and vibrant than municipal tap water. Like spring water you're talking about, just it's not been inundated with human thought form. Like Dr. Emoto shows that, water is listening to human thought form and, changing its structure. So, but even really good, clean, energetic spring water, when they put it on a disc, it grew as well. So no matter what, Evian was the least affected, but it was, I was shocked that Evian spring water in a bottle is actually really good water. It's very vibrant and energetic, but it had a trend of starting to rise as well. But this is what they're really excited about, because, you know, what NASA said is, you know, for this, in all other cases, people know there's a lot of ways to restructure water. You can put it through high magnetic fields, you can spin it, you can vortex it, you know, send it through a vortex. But in all those cases, the periphery of that light pattern gets bigger, brighter, and more diffuse, though. It gets, you know, and they said for the first time ever, now this is NASA, that they seen the longer you kept a cup of water on it, it gets brighter. The brighter, the more energy is returned. But the periphery didn't get bigger and more diffuse. It got focused and smaller. So almost like a magnifying glass, that as you lift the magnifying glass up and say you're trying to burn a leaf as a kid, you know, the periphery of the light pattern gets smaller and smaller as the magnifying glass goes up, until it gets so small and so compact with energy that then it can burn something. In the same way, they said that they're seeing for the first time ever, using this technology, that 432 water focuses the light within the droplet of water into a laser beam of energy. So right now I'm in talks with some people about what happens when you use this water for agriculture and for gardening. And I know the answer. You know, I know just from regular structured water and doing water blessing ceremonies with Chief Golden Light Eagle at Serpent Mound, where I learned a lot. But that is, the crop grows much faster. It's impervious to drought. And the crop itself, say it's tomatoes or a potato, that the actual amount of nutrients per bite is over doubled. So every bite of that you take, you're getting more nutrients into your body. This is history in the making, you know? But with this, what I want to share with you is, because of my work with NASA and whatnot, and they know, you know, the results of their testing was, if you encode that cymatic image into quartz crystal glass. By the way, Chief Golden Light Eagle is the one, before all this happened, he told me and taught me how to do a water blessing ceremony at these clear Fountain of Youth springs here in Florida. And I did. And I'll tell you what, though, you know, I did the ceremony, which was truly supposed to quantum entangle, you know, the attributes of divine living water into this image. It's like almost like the proof that holographic reality is real, and in a hologram, every bit of it contains all of it. So this is a part of the frequency. This was created by the frequency. So NASA is truly really flipped out. I could show you one of my other discs. This is actually a quartz crystal disc of one of the crop circles that was used.
And how's that made? Because the material is shiny. How are these discs made?
By me.
I know, but what's the material? It's interesting.
It's actually, what had happened was, these are the crop circles that was used in the communication with me to impart certain knowledge. And I had a team at the time working with me that said, you know, we're going to take your work, and what crop circles do you want us to remove the information from to be part of what you're doing to release this information. And so this was one of the crop circles. And what I wanted to do was, I found out about some holographic rainbow printing technology, that, because I thought, you know, I could make it any color I want, right? But this makes it interactive, that no matter what color you need, you'll get it by holding it. And what's really fascinating with this, so that's what's happening. This is a new type of holographic rainbow printing, and it's encased in quartz crystal glass, and that's a copper wrap. So the idea that I learned from another contactee he called these Pleiadian healing discs. And the idea, he said, the most important thing, got more discs here I could show you. Sometimes I forget. I'm like, well, I should have brought in some stuff. But the idea was sacred geometry, to encode sacred geometry, Metatron's cube, you know, seeds of life, flower of life, into quartz crystal, and then wrap it with the copper. So I first learned this from another contactee, learned the art form of creating these. But in 2009, I started to become fascinated and guided into cymatics, which is, you know, I thought, why use computer? Because you'll find these images of cymatics encode so much sacred geometry that it's crazy when you see how encoded these truly are. So why encode it with man-made computer-generated sacred geometry? Why not use Mother Nature? So the first time I took my cymatic image, because the scientists that I got this, I mean, it's huge. It's like a 4K image. I could make a print that would take up a wall and it wouldn't be pixelated at all. So I took this image, shrunk it down to 3 inches, and I put that into the quartz crystal glass. And the moment I did, I could feel it. I could feel it like emanating. I was like, whoa. So then I talked to Chief Golden Light Eagle about this, because mind you, he had already told me once I did this water blessing ceremony, he said, this isn't the first time you went to Florida, because, you know, I've now, some of my past incarnations I'm remembering. And one of them was known as the Peacemaker to the Iroquois tribe of Indians. And he's the one that came and showed them another way to get away from blood sacrifice and to use tobacco. So that's all happening again, which is weird. But he said, Michael, he said, once you do this water blessing ceremony at one of these Fountain of Youth springs in Florida, he told me where the first one is. And this is a story that no one even knows. Because if you look into the Peacemaker story, they have the chief that was not going along with the plan of unification of the Iroquois in the formation of America, which means land of the plumed serpent, by the way, interesting, that it was a male war chief. And that's not true. It's just really simple. Males do not have the highest level of authority within the Native American First Nation culture. It's the women, it's the grandmothers. So this chief that was not going along with the plan happens to be none other than White Buffalo Calf Woman. And you can see, like, the Iroquois were at war with one another, brother against brother, tribe against tribe, for a very long time of their timeline. And, you know, you can see a White Buffalo Calf Woman going, how about hell no? I don't want nothing to do with you people. I see what you're about. I see how you treat Mother Nature. I see how you treat each other and even yourselves. Darkness had set in to those tribes. So then Hiawatha gained the support of all the chiefs to go to take out White Buffalo Calf Woman with the arrow, so to speak. They got their asses handed to them, you know, not a wise idea to try to attack White Buffalo Calf Woman. And so they went back with their tail between their legs, but at this time, White Buffalo Calf Woman went back to her homeland of where the bloodline entered, and that's Florida. So Chief said, this isn't the first time, because we've met again. You know, it's an interesting story, because when the Peacemaker went to Florida, and he said he had to travel all the way down to Miami, and that's where the first Fountain of Youth was brought up. He said there was none of these underground spring aquifers that, you know, White Buffalo Calf Woman was surrounded in salt water. You know, you had 2 oceans on both sides. So to make her change her polarity and go along with the plan of unification and to help mankind, he gathered, this is the Peacemaker, gathered those chiefs again. And you can imagine them really not wanting to go along with this because they just got their asses handed to them. As a matter of fact, the story I'm getting is these tribes said, if you're some kind of medicine holy man from the Canada side, how about we try to kill you? And if you survive, then we'll listen to what you have to say. And they did. They put him to the test. And every single time he survived. So after that, they're like, okay, well, we're going to listen to what you have to say. But can you imagine this chief gathering these other chiefs from around the Great Lakes area and traveling by foot to Miami? That's a long haul, you know? But when they arrived in Miami, he, as a gift to his mother, White Buffalo Calf Woman, and that was Chief Golden Light Eagle's own words. He said, as a gift to his mother, he brought her fresh drinking water, and he was known as the water bearer, right? By the way, this is interesting too, because when I met the Anunnaki, they said you were once known as the water bearer. I'm like, okay, what the hell does that mean? You know, might as well said you're the Easter Bunny. I don't know what a water bearer is, but now with NASA getting into it, and you know what, I can look someone in the eye and go, you know what, I am the water bearer. Would you like to see the test results? But anyhow, the water bearer went and using some type of Anunnaki technology, brought forth these underground spring aquifers. And there's thousands of them here in Florida. People don't really know this. They're kind of like a guarded secret. And he said you're to go there and do your water blessed ceremonies with he said the only thing it takes to, if you're a shaman or a medicine man, he said, which you are, he said the only thing that it takes to create a shamanic healing tool is it has to be created by your own two hands. Could be a feather, could be a eagle wing, a rattle, a shaker. And then he said the first spring that was brought up, it's not in St. Augustine, by the way, it's in Miami, and it's owned by a Iroquois chief, and it's not open to the public. And he said he was allowed to visit there, and the chief brought him in with a few others. And it's funny though, he's like, you know, I brought some people there and I thought they were pretty cool, but this Iroquois chief was like, yes, yes, no, yes, no, no, yes. And if you got to know, you just didn't get in. Mm-hmm. So this chief brought Chief Golden Light Eagle and some of the other chiefs into the first spring that Inky, the water bearer, brought up for fresh drinking water. And he said it was really odd because, first of all, they're only 50 feet away from the ocean. So he said, how the hell is 50 feet of dirt holding back an ocean? It just didn't, in his mind, he couldn't put two and two together. He said they were not allowed to take any water out, but they were allowed to bathe, like put their shamanic healing instruments into the water, and that would then bring forth the attributes back to their tribe. And he said, Michael, you know, as great as that is, my reach with my healing instruments was not very far. I had a small group around me that if someone needed a healing in my tribe, I could feather them down with one of my feathers and, you know, bring forth healing or whatnot. But you, he said, you know, these are your shamanic healing tools. Mm-hmm. You know, specific this, you know, encased in quartz crystal, this was created by my own two hands. It happens to be musical, but I played it into existence. So he said now, he said that anything that contains this image, both forwards and backwards in time, he said that once I did the water blessing ceremony, that anything that contained this image, so someone that bought one of my discs years ago, even before the water blessing ceremony, it's always been broadcasting divine healing energy because it was multidimensional. Like once I did the water blessing ceremony. So he said, though, crystal accelerates the process. And these are really good for doing energy work. You know, like, you know, a lot of people found when you go over chakras, it's pretty profound. But he said, no matter what it is, even if I'm wearing a t-shirt that has the image on it, or, you know, I've put them into, matter of fact, the grandmothers are most excited about that's pendants I've had made with the cymatic image. And, you'll notice on here, there's two different versions. One is purple to red, and then one's red to purple. And those are the colors of the human chakras. But Native American First Nations believe once you went through your secret journey, ascension, whatever you want to call it, becoming rainbow, that then your chakras flip. No longer is it red in the root, it's purple in the root. So when all the colors flip, it makes one big white light. People call that the halo, or this white light but it's truly flipped. So that's why there's two different color combinations on these pendants. And one of the grandmothers said, this will restructure water, this pendant alone. It's what I use to actually do the water blessing ceremony along with the disc. But I've seen a lot of the elders, they'll take this. Matter of fact, Clifford Mahooty, do you know who Clifford is?
Yes, he passed away recently.
Yes, he did. He was my roommate for 4 days at a Star Knowledge conference. So we became close, and I gave him one of these. He said, "Oh, good, now I'm part of the Illuminati." His passing was, you know what though? How many of us have helped someone? He had a beautiful life, and a lot of us don't get to live to be a ripe old age and take the long way home. So I applaud him and I wish him a safe journey. And I know we're not these bodies alone, so we'll meet again. But man, it was great having him as my roommate. Matter of fact, can I share a story, a Clifford Mahooty story in tribute?
Yeah, sure.
In, the new Star Wars movie had just come out. And he asked us, I had a couple people in the room. And he said, "Have you guys seen the new Star Wars movie?" And we're like, "Yeah, we've seen it. It's great." He said, "Have you guys got your Jedi names?" Just joking. And he didn't know that growing up, a band member, one of my best friends growing up, his name was Mike Crow. So I called him Croby-Wan Kenobi. And he called me Hilby-Wan Kenobi. My last name's Hill. So when he asked if I got a Jedi name, I go, "Oh yeah, I got mine. It's Hilby-Wan Kenobi." And he just looked at me kind of puzzled, And, some of us were taking a smoke break and going out onto the balcony of the room we had at the Star Knowledge Conference. We said, "Clifford, do you want to come out and join us?" He said, "Yes, I do. But let me grab my translator so I can figure out what you're saying." He's talking about the Hilby-Wan Kenobi Jedi name. So anyhow, we had a lot of laughs. And another one too, he said, "So you and I are going to be roommates for these 4 days?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "What if I bring a bunch of women back to the room?" I go, "I'll be out of here, man. That's guy code." And he started belly laughing. Guy code. Oh, I like that. So we had a wonderful 4 days. And so there's some Clifford Mahooty stories for you.
I have a water story as well, if you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
So all the spring water that I get is from Hope Springs. It's Nestle. I know people think bottled water is horrible, but that's the only kind I can drink out of everything else that's available in British Columbia, Canada. So my water, and I always look at the label. It has 97 ppm per salt content, right? And 0 fluoride. And that's not natural. That's not treated. It comes from the springs in Hope Springs, which is like 7 hours away from South Surrey, where I am. So on New Year's, 5 minutes before 2022, right? I get a bottle of water, just like I usually do. And I don't drink from the bottle itself. I put it in a glass because I don't drink from plastic. So I put it in and I start drinking it. I'm like, oh my God, that tastes like soured milk, like soured milk. And I give it, and I said, "It's disgusting. I'm not drinking this." And I gave it to my parents. They tried it and they're like, that's normal drinking water. What do you mean? I'm like, no, it's not. It's something else. And then my stomach started hurting in my head. And I said, this is not the same source of bottled water because it's not pure and clean. So I went to take a look at the bottled water, and it has 552 ppm salt content per unit, and it has 0.4 fluoride. So I'm like, wait a minute, that's a lot of salt and some fluoride. Where is this from? And I looked at it, it's from Toronto, Ontario.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Toronto has pretty, I would say, has different, obviously, different source of water than what's in Hope Springs, BC. So the purity of water is not the same.
It's very nice that you're paying attention because not many do. If I could make any suggestion to your listeners, Amazon Prime has a documentary called The Secret of Water. Highly recommend it. We didn't misuse it on purpose, I don't think, but we need to realize water is not what we think it is. And it's very important to have good, clean water that we're ingesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our body gets our electricity at a cellular level. Mostly it comes from water.
Yeah.
Uh,
And my body could tell what's pure water and what's very
are very connected. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, and I told my parents that's not the same water, and they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "It's dangerous for you to drink that. It'll liquefy your liver and your kidneys." And so I did some research, and I sent them the article, and they're like, "Yes, we're not going to buy this anymore." We had flooding, so Hope Springs was kind of flooded and dirty. Now they've cleaned things up and it's reopened, so we're getting normal water back. But the thing is, if the tap water if it wasn't treated with chlorine and it wasn't treated with fluoride, it would actually be very decent water here in BC. So it's been contaminated with fluoride and chlorine. It's lost its molecule purity. So it's very dense water. It's not light. Water is light. It's not dense.
You know what? You're so intuitive. And we're talking about water. Can I share something with you? And I really want to get your insight into what you're feeling this means, because I feel it's pretty important. So NASA sees that you somehow the 432 frequency is quantum entangled with the cymatic image. And when you put it in crystal, it's no longer a passive device, it's active. It's communicating, and somehow water is listening, and it has the codes to restructure. And I asked the biophysicist, I said, well, wait a minute, if before it's barely alive, it barely has a pinprick of light, but afterwards, you get this, well, where's that extra energy coming from? And I said, is it coming from our sun? Is it coming from our planets tectonic plates, electromagnetic fields? She said, no, it's coming from another dimension. That whatever is happening, it's opening up a hole in the fabric of our space-time and bringing through energy from another dimension. Well, I'll tell you right now, I've never had to ask myself, what's it mean to be drinking water that has energy from another dimension in it? But the fact of the matter is, NASA has seen an increase of photonic light energy from another dimension that enters water when it's introduced. And NASA was really freaked out by this technology because there's no wires going to it. There's no batteries, But the deal is, I was just contacted by an insider and said, are you aware that Elon Musk is accepting submissions for humanity's Hall of Fame crystal time capsule that's going to be sent to the moon, and it'll be there for the next 10 billion years at least, because it's a very advanced form of quartz crystal that Richard Hoagland knows about, and he said it's filled with these toroidal physics vortexes within the quartz crystal. So I submitted to it because sometimes you just know this isn't accidental, that something is arranging the chess pieces on your board of life. But
Yes.
This is the Elon Musk submission that's now going to be part of the quartz crystal time capsule, Humanity's Hall of Fame, that sometime in this first quarter, meaning either this month, next month, or March, it's going to be taken to the moon by Falcon X rocket ship and deposited on the moon, and it's going to be there forevermore. And you can see, I don't know if you can see.
Michael Lee Hill, yes, they're good.
See where it says Earth Ambassador?
Yes,
I'm like,
nice.
well, Inky means Lord of the Earth. I'm like, I can at least say I am an official Earth ambassador. But this is what has been encoded into the quartz crystal glass, and it's done with quantum computing and nanotechnology, where they can encode massive amounts of data into a quartz crystal, which I think is the same thing that was done with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull as well. But if NASA knows that once this image is encased in crystal, it's active, it's not passive, and whatever it's transmitting turns dead water into living water. Now it's going to be on the moon, shining down on this planet forevermore. It should, in my mind, have an effect on the Earth's water to turn all Earth's water into living water. What are you getting a feeling on about that?
Well, it's crystalline photosynthesis because you have purities of vortex energies around different sources of water. So that's why certain sources are cleaner and some are dirtier naturally, because the vortexes amplify the energy of the water, and that's the crystalline photosynthesis, and it connects to the ley lines of the earth. So it powers this. That's why it literally transforms the water. That's why the Hope Springs water is clean, because there's a energy vortex there that's almost entering another dimension and creating crystalline photosynthesis.
I wonder, because with the team that I was put together with AR board, he was what was called a wave guide, which meant the mental energy that we were creating to ask for help with these doomsday events that were going to happen in 2012. He said his analogy was like a microphone. It takes such a little input of, I don't even know what the word is, but
Frequency.
yeah, like how much it's moving the diaphragm of the microphone is minuscule, but there's a transformer in there that then ups it so you can send that signal out a microphone cable or whatever. And that component is called a waveguide. He said he would be taking our mental energy and increasing it as the waveguide to then send it along to the incoming. So in the same way, this frequency that's going to be forevermore broadcast down to this planet, if it encounters a waveguide, which, if NASA can see this increase of photonic light energy, I'm sure those that are not from here will take notice. But beyond that, frequency and transmission, it doesn't take a lot of energy. I was told even satellites, when they're beaming information back down, it's like half a watt. You wouldn't even think that would, but it doesn't take a lot of wattage. So the whole, imagine forevermore, this frequency that we know it creates this out of water. So all of a sudden, all the water on the planet is going to have vortexes to bring, energy.
Because you've captured the natural crystalline photosynthesis and you've put that into that crystalline reflection. So you put that near any dirty, disgusting source of water and it purifies it with that crystalline photosynthesis, because that's natural. It's part of the vortices. It's part of the transmission frequency tuning, what you've created with these crystalline harmonic devices.
I agree. It's so interesting because we're just on the verge of this that, I truly don't know what effect it'll have, but I know the grandmothers and a lot of people that are not from here seem to be very excited because, no matter what, there's an accumulative measure of this frequency forevermore beaming down and hitting the planet. And all that water that gets restructured and takes on this structure within the water droplet, guess what? It's gonna evaporate and it's gonna go up and it's gonna become rain, and it'll come back down, and this whole planet will be rained out. Because it occurs to me, I'm really starting to think that water holds the Akashic record.
It does.
It's totally listening to human thought form, and it records it. So like Dr. Emoto showed, if you put negative thought forms and like, I hate you, or you can't do that, you tape those words to a glass of water, as it crystallizes, it looks like mud. But if you tape, I love you, or, you know, no worries was a beautiful, you know, it makes beautiful snowflake geometry and lots of facets of that diamond to reflect light off of. So what he showed is, you know, when you tape negative thought forms to water, it's restructuring itself, and there's no geometry. But if you have a technology that then can bring back the shine to water, that truly means the negative thought forms have been removed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like taking a squeegee to the Akashic record of, for mankind, of specifically municipal tap water. That's a miracle in itself. But you know what I'm starting to understand? And I don't know, yeah, it'll restructure water, but man, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is photonic light energy. I think it's almost like the energy that becomes physical. Everything's made of light, right? You know, everything is light that's slowed down and becomes physical. Light and sound creates physical reality. Well, you know, I think it's part of the golden age. You know what I mean? That this is going to be on the moon. By the way, I wanted to show you this before this is my participation certificate from Elon Musk, you know, saying that, you know, my submission has been accepted into this mission. And so I think it's cool, even for people that have my disc, and it's this one specifically, as I showed you the other one, you know, it's this. So when people go out in the night sky and look up at the moon holding their disc, hey, that's up there. You know what I mean? It's an interesting, just fun tidbit of, and you know, this is a form of art. It's really the first piece of art that's going to be on the moon. You know, it's fun. I like fun.
And it would be interesting to see, to take your crystalline photosynthesis disc, to take it to Ontario, to that source of spring water, to put it there, several of them, and to see how it purifies the water, then measure it.
Yes.
The ppm would be, and the fluoride content, because that's natural water. That's not treated. They take it from the springs, but you see it's contaminated because Toronto, Ontario has a lot of pollution.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of water coming up. You know, a lot of people don't like well water in other parts of the country, because no matter what that water coming up, it's gonna take on whatever its surroundings are and the materials that's there. That's one good thing about Florida, because Florida is very sandy. And when water comes up, like we have well water here in our house, so it's pure, man. And one thing, when I moved here to be with my beloved, it kind of pissed me off, because I realized, man, I've not been drinking real water. You know, when you drink water that doesn't have fluoride and doesn't have chlorine, and man, it's delicious, and the
Consistency of it.
Consistency of it is different. It's almost like thicker, you know, it has more liquidiness of it. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and what I learned from that lesson is my body is a tuning frequency. So if you were to get me to become a sommelier, you know, like the wine tasters and the wine connoisseurs, they can tap, they drink the wine and they can, or smell it, and they can tell you, sommelier. I can't pronounce it correctly. They just call them the Psalms, because it's hard to pass even the tests for that. And I'm not a wine drinker. I don't drink alcohol, but they could tell the frequency of the wine, where it comes from, who made it, what's the source. My body is like that. My parents said, man, you can work in quality control to say, this is good, this is bad, this passes, this doesn't pass the quality, because the body instantly knows if it's disgusting frequency or if it's pure frequency. So, I mean, this is just bottled mineral water. It's in bottles even, and I can't drink from the bottle because the disgusting plastic makes me sick. Once I put it in glass, it's fine. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Glasses.
yeah, glass is good. The consistency of the water really does matter depending on where you are in the world.
That's all they did was, they would test these 3 different waters at control, no being introduced to my 432 disc. And then if, like, let's just take municipal tap water, they did the most deep test, and that was they just took a glass of water, no printing on it, because printing is programming. So you want just clear glass water. And then they put it on the disc and let it sit for 15 minutes. And then took another 6 photographs. And then at a half hour, took another 6 photographs. And at 50 minutes, took another 6 photographs. And she said, Michael, I don't think it's done doing its thing even at 50 minutes, that it kept focusing the light into a laser beam of energy. And she suggested to put a glass of water on the disc at night and let it sit overnight. And then every morning get up and just drink it as a ritual, and then refill it and let it sit. And as your day goes on, just drink from it. But I'll show you with the natural, municipal tap water. This was the result. Like I said, it was a tiny pinprick of light. This is after being on the 432 disc. But as example, this is the spring water. So you can see this is still even more energetic. But this, how can I say this? This is about the same energetics that this was before the 432 frequency. This is about how big the spring water was. So you can see that's still a pretty big increase. But so municipal tap water after being introduced to this frequency, and Canadian spring water, which they manufacture into a bottled water called Flow. In Canada, it's really popular there. I guess you can get it at gas stations or whatnot. But in the same way, they don't use plastic, which is cool. They put it in cardboard boxes that Flow spring water comes in Canada. So you think, man, to me it seems this is bigger than what I can wrap my head around. I'm talking about Elon Musk taking, he's putting it into very advanced quartz crystal. And we already know that once you put this image into quartz crystal, it's not passive. And now it's going to go to the moon and be there for the next 10 billion years. It seems pretty important.
Oh, it is, because it's shining back a light of crystal photosynthesis back to us to continue the cycle of cleansing in the light. But you're also, yeah.
If I get the message that it's on its way, I'll let you know for sure.
Awesome. But you're also using the 432 hertz frequency to communicate with Oumuamua.
Yes.
Can you describe that a little bit and what that's doing?
Yeah, what people don't know this, but there's been some transmissions being received through a big telescope array in New Mexico, and it's truly coming in at 432,000 megahertz and 144 megahertz. And what you find is when your A note is tuned properly to 432, your D note is tuned to 144 hertz, and the F sharp note is tuned to 1440. And so that's why Richard Hoagland already knew, and I had already arranged, because he knew that NASA had been looking into how energy works multidimensionally, and it's all based on 432 based math and physics. And this toasted my noodle is he knew about it because he's not a musician. He wouldn't have known the tone part of it. But these numbers are also precessional cycle numbers, meaning the precessional cycle is a cycle of the wobble of the earth that takes 25,920 years. And this is the cycle of like leaving the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius and so forth, the whole astrological circle, of astrology. And the reason is that just the Earth is off axis, right? And if you just took a straight point out from the Earth, it doesn't hold a straight arrow out into space. It wobbles, making a circle, right? And that circle, if you were able to go in the middle of that circle and look out, you would see the star constellations that make up our astrological 12 symbols. So the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius was so prophesied because, like we were saying, it'd be Earth entering into a new golden age. But look what happens when, first of all, I'll just tell you, 25,920 divided by the system of timekeeping that was given to us by the Anunnaki, which is all like larger divisions are made by 12. You either divide a whole unit by 12 or you multiply a whole unit by 12. And, with 12, you can see they've given us this idea of 12 inches in a foot, 12 hours in a day. By the way, look at how many seconds is in 12 hours of a day. It's 43,200, 432. And then when you take that 432, or that exact number, 43,200, I learned from Graham Hancock that if you take the height and width of the Great Pyramid in Giza and multiply it by 43,200, you get the accurate dimensions of planet Earth. Isn't that something? So this 432 frequency, I didn't know it was encoded into the precessional cycle. And the reason this happens is, divide or multiply whole units by 12 and larger, macro. When you get down to the micro, it switches to 60, whether it's, 60 minutes in an hour or 60 seconds in a minute. Well, 60, for the most part, I know there's microseconds and whatever, but the second is the smallest division. So the largest, 25,920, smallest, 60. So you take 25,920 and divide it by 60, it's 432. The whole cycle is 432 based. And then you find out they must have given us the idea too of what a mile is, because, just because your piano is tuned properly, in the middle of your piano, that middle A note is tuned to 432. Guess what, man? You still got all these lower A notes on your piano. They're called octaves. So to get the actual scientific number, hertz, it's called. Hertz is how many mountains is in that waveform. So 10 hertz would be 10 mountains, per second. So the lower octave is 432 divided by 2. It's 216. 216 divided by 2 is 108. 108 is interesting because the Tibetan monks have 108 prayer beads on their prayer bracelets, and they will repeat mantras and chants 108 times. Then 54 is 108 divided by 2. And then 27 is 54 divided by 20. 54 divided by 2 is 27. And then 432 multiplied by 2, its higher octave is 864. The reason I'm telling you this is, when you use miles, the sun is 8,640 miles across. That's 864 is 432 times 2. The moon is 2,160 miles across. That's a lower octave of 216. Our actual physical reality is 432 based. This isn't woo-woo pie in the sky stuff. This is science that humanity really doesn't know yet. But it makes sense because I asked, well, why is 432 so important to the big woman upstairs? And they pointed me to 2 crop circles that one encoded Inky. Oh, my doggy came in to see me. Oh,
Nice.
There's a crop circle that encoded an ASCII binary code in 2010, E equals MC squared. And then in 2011, I had asked them, because they told me I was once known as Ea Inky. I'm like, well, the water bearer. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I put them to a test. I said, listen, If I am who you say I am and you are who you say you are, encode the name Inki into a crop circle. I can tell you, I will take notice because I'm a student of the subject. And this was in early 2009. No magic crop circle showed up. And but at that time I was being guided into cymatics, as I was talking about. But in 2011, this is started just, I give away freebies now with some of my products, and it shows this is a pin, you know, that you just put on your hat or whatever. But this is the actual crop circle, and it encodes the name Inki. I asked him to encode Inki into a crop circle. My next thought was, what a silly request. Imagine a crop circle with like Inki written in cursive. It's like a big birthday cake. And what the hell? Who's gonna believe that anyhow? And then the thought occurred to me, well, if you are who you say you are, figure out a cool way to do it, you know? Sure enough, they did. These, can you see these rows of circles?
Yes.
At the end of the 7-pointed star?
Mm-hmm.
Those are ASCII binary code, and when you decode it, it says ES space Inki. So they did, but I got to tell you as well, when I put this test out to them, I ended it with, and while you're at it, encode it was only something I would be able to decode. And so when this showed up, mind you, 2009 is when I asked them. 2011 is when this showed up in Perono, Italy. So this became very important to me. But as I said, in the time of 2009 to 2011, I started being guided into cymatics and the science of making frequency visible. And what I had done is track down the proper cymatic image for every note of the musical scale, but tuned properly. And I had placed each one of those into one of these quartz crystal discs. Well, before I did that 7-disc set, I had done this crop circle into one of my discs because it was so important to me. But when I got to the end of making the 7 musical note set, the last note was an A note. And when I made it, that cymatic image creates a 7-pointed star. Really, like, specifically, I should have that in here, and I don't. I'm sorry, I'm so unprepared.
That's okay.
But what happened was, I seen the 7-pointed star. I had just made the Inki crop circle. And as you can see, 7-pointed star, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 and 2 wasn't clicking. I seen the 7-pointed star of the A musical note. I'm going, why does this look so familiar to me? I didn't realize, well, maybe you should look at the disc you just made of the crop circle, but I didn't. I sat there and stared at it, and I'm like, this looks so familiar to me. Where have I seen this before? And finally, after about 10 minutes, his voice is just like, just let it go. You know, it'll come to you. And but sitting here trying to force it is not going to help. So I put the disc down, and I looked to my right, and I seen this disc. I seen the 7-pointed star, and for the first time, it was, what's that called? Revelation,
Mm-hmm.
where tears came up. Oh my God, they did encode it with something only I would be able to decode, and that is the relationship of the 7-pointed star to 432. So this is why Richard Hoagland brought me into this team that was going to try to communicate with this space object, Oumuamua. Thought, yeah, some of these questions, it's a long way to the answer. But so they brought me into the team to actually bring content that would be 432 based math and physics. And, you know, like I said, numbers that are already encoded into the world's religions, past cultures, and sacred sites, which is precessional cycle numbers or 432 base numbers, which is 864, 432, 216, 108, 54, and 27. So I gave them those tones to add to the transmission, both as binary code and actual tones. But then they asked me, well, could you create a song that incorporated what you've learned from them. I said, well, guess what? I already have. And that is a song called Morning Star, which is available on YouTube, and it's new. But the deal is that Morning Star is the first song I know of ever that's actually encoding cosmic harmonious frequencies. It's tuned properly. Not only is it tuned to A equals 432, but I've developed my own tuning systems that pull more notes into harmonic vortexes of energy areas along the travel of octaves. And I know this gets a little much, but you know, when A.R. Borden, 15, told me, in this course of study, you're going to learn that to create matter, you need specific frequencies, but not just specific frequencies, you need specific frequencies in specific combination. Well, I can tell you, it took about 10 years for me to crack that code. And it happened when NASA got involved, because the biophysicist said, what we found is only when the frequency resolves to 9, meaning 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 9. It's lower octave, 216. 2 plus 1 plus 6 is 9. 108, 9. 54, 9. 27, 9. Only when the frequency resolves to 9 is there an increase of photonic energy seen that's being brought through from another dimension from that frequency. So this posed a problem to me, because I got my guitar out and I worked out of a whole grid of all of the musical notes tuned properly and their accurate frequencies. And I found every single note, no matter where you are, resolves to 9 if you're tuned to A equals 432. So it doesn't matter if you're on the E string or, you know, the D string or the B string. And it doesn't matter what fret you're on or what, it's all of them resolve to 9. So it occurred to me, well, how would I ever figure out what notes you need then to create the most effect? And so, you know, and your listeners as well, Google frequency creates anti-gravity. Mainstream science now has released, they found specific frequencies create negative mass or negative matter. AR didn't say that. He said, you're going to find to create mass, you need specific frequencies, but it's negative mass. And this negative mass creates negative gravity. And so frequencies that create this field of negative mass around the frequency is actually creating a field of anti-gravity. So when our E equals mc squared mass, normal mass, goes into that field, particles float up instead of down. I think this starts to answer how pyramids were made. Some of the Tibetan monks were said to be able to levitate stones into place. And the old gentleman, I can't remember his name, but the Coral Castle here in Florida, this little 110-pound old gentleman was able to move these tons of megalithic stones into place. But the deal is, right when I seen this E equals mc squared crop circle, which by the way, it showed up in the exact same field as the Inky with a 7-pointed star. Instantly, I thought, well, I know they use crop circles multidimensionally. So they'll put some information in one year and they'll expound on it in the next year. They did it with the Arecibo response in that crop circle. So I'm like, what is 432 and, you know, E equals mc squared have to do with one another? And then the answer came that 432 squared is C. 432 times 432 is the speed of light within 1% accuracy. So the only frequencies that are truly components and harmonics of light are 432 based frequencies. Run it backwards, it's 432 based frequencies squared becomes C squared times mass equals energy. And AR said, you know, when you learn these things, you're going to produce a version of LERM. You're going to produce something from nothing, which is photonic light energy, and it can't be argued with. It's not debatable, and it'll change the planet. He told me this back in 2008. It didn't happen until the NASA stuff. When did that? It's about 2 or 3 years ago now. But One interesting thing, though, I want to bring up is I think it's just human consciousness. But you know, all this water blessing ceremony, all this stuff happening was before NASA looking into it. And I sent her a disc, and I had about a month and a half of waiting. And man, it's hard to shut down that part of our voice that is always going, oh, don't count your chickens before they hatch. You know, what if they find nothing? And I'm thinking this other voice are going, are you kidding me? You think all this is by accident? And like, then you've learned nothing. You know, you better start understanding that, you know. So I took faith in that, but it's still hard for me. Like, I don't like just to assume anything. I guess that's the scientist in me. But sure enough, you know, now it's history in the making. And I am really excited. It looks like I'm going to get some funding to look into what happens when you use this water for agriculture. So
Beautiful. And so what's happening with the Oumuamua stuff? Are you guys getting back?
because of these messages coming back, when we designed a message to transmit back, almost instantaneously UFOs started showing up over the array, and it's been filmed. And not only that, very specific scientific information, and they arrive in these real short bursts. And the astronomer said that in a vision, lucid dream state, he was approached by this being of light, and he's like, what am I supposed to do with these little chirps of information? And he said the being, I'll do what he said. He said the being looked at him and said, slow it down. So they took these chirps and they slowed them down like 400%, and all of a sudden they can see they're just loaded with information. There's code, but not only that, and Richard Hoagland was very excited about that. He said one of these chirps that they slowed down sounds like something is singing my song Morning Star back to us. I've not heard it yet. That's why he's asking me to come back on his show this Saturday. And so this might be history in the making as well, of confirmable contact with something. You know, it might not even be a Oumuamua, but whatever it is, there's something multidimensional. And what happened to me is I was told this a long time ago. It was said that one day you're going to have a dream, and in it you're going to meet the creator. You're going to meet source, and she's going to give you a flower to represent your meeting with her. And in that meeting, you're going to know everything's cool and you're loved beyond measure, and everything, there's no need to worry ever, that you're loved. And then the next morning when you wake up, you're going to awake to find a real rose on your chest in the real world. Then what? You know, the idea is that once you start paying attention to synchronicity and the weird coincidences, and the more you pay attention, the more it grows, to the point that all doubt is removed, that something is in contact with you. That leads to a whole nother bit of understanding. Well, what is it? You know, what is in communication? I'm starting to believe it's our higher self. You know, what else could have that kind of personal access to our most innermost loves and fears, hopes and dreams and doubts? So what occurred to me recently was the radio astronomer, his name is Jimmy Blanchett, and he was getting these codes that are leading, when you decode what it is, to 27, which is 432 based. Not only 432, it's coming in at 432,000 hertz. 144 is part of the 432 matrix. All these things is communicating 7-pointed star, 432 based information. Then you get to me, totally separate. If I had to give you in a nutshell what I've learned from the Anunnaki, it's all cosmic harmonious 432 based information, the 7-pointed star, and its relationship to 27 hertz. As I told you, one of the crop circles had that 7-pointed star. Then that led me to understand that when 27 hertz is pumped through a cymatic device that makes frequency visible, it creates a 7-pointed star. But as I told you, I started work with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, which Chief Golden Light Eagle told me is over 200,000 years old. And by the way, I went third eye to third eye with it, which isn't allowed, by the way. I sat down in front of it, and I don't get messages like this a lot, but man, this voice was like, you need to touch your forehead to mine. I was like, what? You know? So I had to tell the current guardian of the skull, I know this is awkward, but man, this thing's telling me that I need to touch my forehead to it. He said, yes, I know, and you have permission. And he said, I want you to know that's a very advanced initiation. So I did, and boy, words fail. But while I was third eye to third eye with it, I decided to open up my eyes. And that was such a startle that it almost slapped me out of the state of consciousness I was in, because it was something more beautiful than I've ever seen. I don't know if you've ever seen the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, but it is amazingly clear. And
I've seen images of it. I haven't seen it in person because it travels. So, but I saw that it shows the creation of the Maya. It shows creation of the Aztecs. It shows creation of this planet because it's encoded with the Atlantean Akashic records, Hall of Records.
yeah, it communicated to me that me being Inky, or, you know, we've all had so many names. You know, I can go through a list of names that I know. When I met the Anunnaki, they used some type of technology that stimulated my third eye. And they said, we're removing your memory blocks. And first of all, I was like, I didn't know I had memory blocks. That's kind of weird. But then it led to another thing. I'm like, how would suppressed memories surface into my consciousness without me going insane? And, you know, at that point, I didn't even know my heritage with being Seneca. And then, you know, it was like memory blocks were being removed. But the crystal skull, yeah, it's unbelievably clear and beautiful. And when I opened my eyes, it was like looking through a pair of big crystal binoculars, you know, and everything was just all getting a peek into this crystalline world. And really, it was startling. Like, it was such beauty. But so what happens is all of that was filmed for a new documentary on the crystal skull, being done by Ruben Langdon, who does the show Interview with Extra Dimensionals for Gaia. And people don't know this, but he has like another secret life as a stuntman, and he's the one that brought motion capture technology. You know, where they put on a suit and has all the little ping pong balls? He was the guy that brought it to the movie Avatar, and he's the stuntman that was actually in the suit as the main character stuntman. So he's got this side life as looking into consciousness. So when I brought the crystal skull to East Lake, Ohio, this Hall of Records mount site, he had a production team come there and film it. And we became friends, and he knows if my message from the Anunnaki would be the 7-pointed star because of its relationship to cosmic harmonious frequency. It's like frequency's relationship to geometry, and the word morning star, because the morning star is actually, it goes back to Sumer, like was said, it's Inky holding it, but the Mayans call it the Lamat, L-A-M-A-T, and that version of it really looks like a Templar cross. And to them, that is the place in the timeline between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, where mankind would shed this old reality of a dark age, and the phoenix would rise, and we would become this new golden age, you know, the phoenix. But now people will tell you, oh, well, the morning star is planet Venus. That's just a metaphor. Venus is the last celestial object that's visible in the night sky before morning. It's the light bringer. It brings the morning. Truly, it's a metaphor of the first ray of light into the darkness. It's the first ray of the golden age into a dark age. So the Mayans were always on the lookout for the morning star and tidbits that would, but what I can tell you is the Native American First Nations, it grew into there where chiefs have the symbol on their headdress for chiefs, and it's the four-pointed version. And so I get a call from Reuben Langdon. He's all excited. And he said, we went to New York. There's a female medium, and her name is Emily Ra. And they filmed her with a session with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. By the way, it doesn't matter.
It does. Please mention. It does matter.
You know, when I was told I was part of the team that brought it here, it communicated to me that I'm the creator of the skull in another incarnation. So, you know, Mitchell Hedges was an explorer from the early 1900s that found it, and his daughter ended up with it. But, you know, the more accurate name would be the 13th crystal skull. But beyond that, Bill Hammond is the current guardian. He said, what do you think its name is? I said, Inky. That's its name. But anyhow, so I get a call from Reuben Langdon, and he said, Michael, you ain't gonna believe it, but during this session with Emily Ra that was filmed for the documentary, we asked her, did the skull give you any message to give to mankind? She said, yes, it showed me a 7-pointed star and the words morning star. So that floored me. I was like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I mean? How is me and the skull, which now we have such an intimate relationship, are hitting the same source of information, for one. But actually, I'd like your input on that. But before I do, I'll tell you, I asked Bill about this. I said, how is that possible? He said, these skulls, like you said, it has the Akashic record of all. You know, and the 13th takes it galactic. You know, the other 12 is the 12, like if you slice up the Akashic record of planet Earth into hours, each hour is one crystal skull, so there's 12. But if none of the 12 accomplish bringing mankind into the next golden age, the 13th is the failsafe, because if the failsafe becomes activated, it has all the information of the 12 plus what brings it galactic. Mm-hmm. And so the reason about getting back to the metaphor of meeting the creator, and you are given a flower, and when you wake up, there's a rose on your chest. Just about a week ago, I had a dream, and in the dream, it seemed like I didn't really understand the connection of me, the skull, and Jimmy Blanchett. We're all receiving the exact same communication. 7-pointed star, 27, 144. You know, it's very specific scientific data that's coming from the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, myself, and Jimmy Blanchett through the radio telescope Oumuamua project. So at this point in the dream, this was revealed to humanity, and it unfolded itself to be proof to the planet that first contact has been made, that these 3 different unrelated sources of incoming data are redundant, and it's the exact same scientific cosmic harmonious frequency information. So I woke up out of the dream and I was all excited, and I'm like, man, I wish that was true. I'm like, oh my God, it is true. You know what I mean? It's like I woke up with a rose on my chest, metaphorically, you know, and I went, oh my God, you know. So now is when, you know, Richard Hoagland just got a hold of me, had told me, by the way, when Jimmy added my song Morning Star to the transmission, because it's tuned properly, he said the activity went through the roof, that more UFOs started showing up over the array, more chirps, more information came in. So I'm really looking forward to, because now what's happened is all the information coming in. Richard Hoagland has people from NASA and Hollywood looking into translating the message, again, kind of in the movie Contact method. But you know what I was told to go back by those that are not from here? They said, go back and watch the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's all about making contact with a higher source through music and frequency. And, you know, now I watched it again. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even get it before, but it's throughout the whole movie. Even, you know, some of the indigenous cultures in the movie were coming in contact with these ships, and they're all singing that musical tune, you know. So we'll find out more this Saturday. Please, if you're free, tune in, and your listeners too. His radio show is called The Other Side of Midnight, and it's been really strange. He's such a scientist, and I feel like Forrest Gump of all this, man. I'm still, again, I know I'm in communication, but I still consider myself just like this rock and roll guitar player. That all this shit's been thrown in my lap, and
you asked me also about the Hedges Mitchell crystal skull, and what it's saying to me is giving me Hillel, the Hellenic, the bringers of the new dawn. So this is literally the contact of the new dawn, because Oumuamua,
Morning Star.
yes, yeah, Oumuamua is an antenna. It's like a probe. It's a space probe antenna that holds.
You know what I was guided to? You're right. Imagine it's a space probe collector,
Mm-hmm.
that all these orbs of light that are all over the planet right now are taking in data, and then Oumuamua comes in at the end of the cycle and collects all the data.
Exactly, and it these codes that are being transmitted back as information about galaxies, solar systems, first creation, how this Milky Way galaxy, how the Andromeda galaxy was created, how this first universe that we're in, known as the known universe, how was that created? It has all that data. And it also has stasis pods of various beings have been on it, on and off, traveling to places that it's delivering them to. And it has seeder vaults of DNA to seed different star systems and planets. So it has so much information encoded in Oumuamua. So it's not just a probe, it's seeded life, it's had life on it in stasis, and it also, now it's mostly acting as a probe collecting info. So this is what's being beamed down to you, the codes to decode.
Yeah, it's almost like the tones of creation and the secrets of, you know, star knowledge, right? Well, what is star knowledge? It's the knowledge of light and sound.
Mm-hmm.
And the building blocks, like the actual blueprints of how physical reality is created. Because the point is, with all the numbers before in the precessional cycle, what I found is the sun being 8,640 miles across and the moon being 2,160 miles across, those are perfect octaves of 432. And that's why we get full totality eclipses, where when the moon eclipses the sun, it's perfect. That's the only reason why it is that way. But, you know, with the precessional cycle, it hit me, well, wait a minute. That's a 25,920 year cycle. How did they create that cycle to encode 432 based physics? I'm starting to understand, no, it's like light is 432 based. So even if we went to another solar system and looked at their orbits, and they're created from the same light we are in this third dimension, it's going to be 432 based. So I think even before we got to another solar system, we would be able to scientifically show, you know, the planets are going to adhere to this template. But that gets into the old template that 432 is based upon. It's a 3D template, and it's based on the 6-petaled seed of life, which creates the Merkaba, the double tetrahedron shape. And Richard Hoagland is one of the ones that showed, if you take that double tetrahedron, Star of David shape, and you just draw a circle around it, where the the pyramid, where those points are on the earth or a circle, is 19.5, either north or south, because there's two pyramids. And the reason this is important is the biggest upwelling of energy multidimensionally, like on planet Earth, 19.5 latitude is Hawaii, and the largest volcano on the planet sits on that 19.5. And all the other planets, the largest upwelling of energy, like the great storm of Saturn, is 19.5. Every planet shows like this upwelling of energy coming from a higher dimensional state is 19.5. But the Anunnaki led me into, I look at that seed of life that creates, the six-petaled seed of life. And then I think keep adding circles and you eventually get to the flower of life. But that's 3D existence that they've showed me, which I can show you here. I don't know, it's probably can't even see that.
I can see it, yeah.
That's a 7-petal seed of life. And maybe I make things just for myself, having fun with this stuff, but
It's growing, isn't it? It's multiplying.
yeah, it's spreading. This is using the same rainbow holographic printing. I've made a coaster. You can see the 6-petal version. Well, the reason this was even communicated was a crop circle. And what they had done one night is, while I was trying to get to sleep, they had guided me into the 7-pointed star, like I said, and its relationship to 432. They just would not let me sleep. They're like, Michael, you need to get up and divide a circle by 7. And they just wouldn't let it go. So I had to go to my wife, honey, I got to get up and do some math. She's like, okay, you freak, go ahead, So I came in here and got the calculator out, and I 360, which is a circle, divided by 7 is 51.428. Exactly. So I was like, all right, so what? Why is this important? And the first thing that they did was, and you can go along with me, at your third eye, picture a circle. And then they said 51.428 is exactly 1/7 away around the circle. So 51.428 is forever intertwined into a 7-pointed star. So they took that circle and they used like an astral highlighter, and they just highlighted 1/7 of the way of the circle, and they let the rest of it fall away, which just left this arc, right? And they said that's the true Ark of the Covenant, that it was never an ARK, it was an ARC. And that once this was understood, it would bring mankind into a new form of energy, which is the Ark of the Covenant. That's what it's said to do, right? And so what they showed me then was, they had 1/7 of the circle highlighted, but then they mirrored it to itself and brought it up where it made connected to itself, and it made an eye shape. And right when I seen that, again, they said that's the Ark of the Covenant, and that's what you're looking for. So I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool to see that 51.428 arc eye shape as a 7-pointed star? And the next day they put it in the UK into a crop circle. That's a little freaky to me still, you know what I mean? I'm here in Florida, and to see that shape go into a crop circle, I make discs out of that as well, but unfortunately, like I said, I'm unprepared. But people could see all of this. Just go to my website, michaelleehill.net or .com, and go to the crop circle discs, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Well, this crop circle, well, picture this. See the outer edge of that, where it makes a 7-pointed star around the 7? It's like pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Those pyramids and that exact forms in the Gnostic Christianity circles what they call the seal of the 7 archangels. And when you see the seal of the 7 archangels, it is this, but And each pyramid up here, it'll say Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, so on and so forth. This is important because when they put this crop circle down in the UK, it's along that ley line that goes through Avebury and Stonehenge, and it's where all the crop circles are showing up. And they had already, like I said, they had the Native American Nephilim, you know, Anunnaki human hybrids, had recognized me as Saint Michael and given me back the Sword of Truth, a crystal version of it. They said, this is not the real version. Your real sword is much bigger and it's still in the astral, but as above, so below. This is your earthbound version of it. And they did a ceremony, which, you know, I have the whole thing filmed of them giving me my name, Rainbow Warrior Eagle. But here to find out, that ley line that runs through the UK where they put this seal of the 7 archangels is 51.428 latitude on this planet. And guess what the name of it is? St. Michael and Mary's ley line. And it's famous. It's the most famous ley line on the planet. And it runs through the UK. So what started to hit me is, you know, the 6-petaled seed of life encodes where the largest upwelling energy is. But the 51.428 latitude line is where energy is inputted or like put into the matrix of the planet. And why this is important is instantly I become friends with Graham Hancock, as I said, and he told me how the pyramid is when you multiply the height and width by 43,200, you get the accurate dimensions of planet Earth. But we were also talking, he said, you know that he had the outside side angle at 51.86. And till very recently, we thought the pyramid was 4-sided. But now we know it's 8-sided. And though that hidden angle is only revealed through the shadows on the solstice, spring solstice and fall solstice. So only on those 2 days is that extra hidden angle, because obviously if there's 8 sides, there's more than one angle. And right when I seen this, I'm like, oh, I wonder what that other angle is. And again, I guess inky in my head was like, Michael, subtract your 51.428 from that 51.86. So I did, and obviously it's 432. That really hurt my head though. You know, it's like, wow, how this intelligence has the means to encode this information in the pyramid that would only be released and revealed twice a year. And it's the Ark of the Covenant to those that it's waiting for. And I can tell you with the crystal skull, I went to Bill and I explained how, you know, I got this message that, you know, the message from the skull is the 7-pointed star. I said, how can that be? And the words morning star. And he had a really cool idea, and I want to run it by you, is, yeah, this thing's got the Akash for everything. Not only it has the Akash galactic connection to bring the Akashic record of planet Earth galactic, he said, you know, I'm remembering 432, but I didn't invent this. It's been given to us. The 432 matrix has been encoded as long as we can remember. Like I said, the Anunnaki encoded 43,200 seconds in 12 hours. It's encoded the 432 based math and physics through everything. So it's not like I didn't do this, but he said, imagine that we know, like Thomas Edison, if he wouldn't have invented the light bulb, there's 3 other people waiting in the wings to invent the light bulb. It's almost like when there's a certain threshold that mankind is going to make a jump in evolution, that information is hanging in the astral. And it's like, that's what's happening with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, that it has the keys, but it's waiting for and searching out those humans that have, like, it's locked inside the skull, and it's looking for the key masters. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
it, once it finds the human that has the key to stick into the lock, then it has the multi-dimensional ability to unleash that knowledge onto the planet. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I really, man, it freaked me out a little bit when I heard its message was identical to my message, because how can that be, you know?
Well, and it's telling me that Earth is almost 30 million years old.
Makes sense.
30 million, yeah. Because it's just like people are like, oh, it's a couple of million, the universe is a couple of billion, but this planet Earth has seen so many civilizations come and go.
Yes.
And it's saying, the skull is showing me 30 million years. So the number 30 million has
Interesting.
connection to
That
its
sounds,
creation.
it sounds totally accurate. You know, while we're still on the subject, and I really appreciate it, since you are able to contact the skull, which I think is awesome, so thank you, by the way, does it have any message that it wants to give to humanity?
Again, connect to the bringers of the dawn. Go back to your own life creation, your own past selves, and the answers that you seek are always connected to the past lives, because what we've done in the past we're recreating now in a different form and in a different shape, but we're still connected to the past.
It's interesting because it was communicated to me, that whole "we are the ones we've been waiting for," which is interesting.
And again, the 30 million, that figures into your next math equation somehow for something that you're working on for your
I'll keep it in mind, and thank you.
your project. And
I'm
keep
really excited about all of it. But I'll tell you what I'm more excited than anything is I'm so excited to get back into music. I've updated my whole recording studio, and I want to start making creations. And in, like, Morning Star is my first musical composition that incorporates these ideas, and I want to look into it, you know.
played the blue note. The crystal skull is saying play the blue note. I'm not sure what that is, but what is the blue note?
It's very interesting. In blues music, there's most blues is based off of a pentatonic scale, it's called, and it's actually really written into human consciousness. Like, but anyhow, the blue note is like a note that not many people know of. That's a part of the pentatonic scale that just adds in some cha. Cha is like that extra ingredient that just brings something special. But I can tell you, the blue note as well is an F sharp note, because when you're tuned to 432, the F note is vibrating specifically at 1440 and 1440 hertz. And that frequency alone is the double tetrahedron, meaning if you take a tetrahedron, which is a three-dimensional pyramid, and look at the internal angles that makes it up, there's 720 eternal angles that comprise a tetrahedron. Well, Star David is a double tetrahedron. So what's 720 by 720? It's 1440. So what I'm told, and it was interesting because the guy that I created Morning Star with, and he sang it, his name is Dan Reed, and he's in contact with the Arcturians. So not that long ago, when we got ready to do this Oumuamua transmission, he knew we were transmitting Morning Star. He's like, if I could make a suggestion, I would say to transmit octaves of F sharp. And I said, well, okay, I will do that. But I said, don't think I'm not going to ask you why you chose F sharp in the future, you know? And then it came to me because I looked at the grid. I'm like, oh my God, F sharp is it's double tetrahedron.
Yeah, it's the symphony harmonic of all life creation and then some. That's what the skull is telling me. Because I'm
Yes.
still connected
But only
to.
3 dimensions, you know, the
Yes.
3-dimensional construct, which it's not, the acorn can't exist. The giant oak can't exist without the acorn. The 6-petaled Merkaba star is how energy flows into the 3rd dimension, but the 7-petaled seed of life is 5D. I look at it as caterpillar and butterfly, and the butterfly is no better than a caterpillar. One doesn't exist without the other, but it's almost like we've experienced our 3-dimensional existence in a 6-petaled sacred geometry of knowing ourselves, and to be able to reflect back and know ourselves in all ways. Now imagine, and that petal, that 6-petaled version of the Star of David also encodes a cube, Metatron's cube. And what's interesting, that's all straight lines, right? It's a container. It is a cocoon. And did you ever hear a story about the story of the cocoon? The little boy finds it, and the butterfly's struggling to get out. And he thinks, well, I could just snip the bottom of its cocoon and help it, and help it out. Well, he sits there and watches it about 10 minutes and it's just struggling. It's pushing so hard and it can't free itself. So finally he says, heck with it, takes out, his pocket knife, snips the bottom of the cocoon. Yeah, the butterfly does, come out, but it was never able to fly, because what the little boy didn't know, it's the struggle of the caterpillar within the cocoon is what pushes the blood out in its wings and allows it to evolve to its next state. That without the struggle of the cocoon, the butterfly can't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a great metaphor, because we all want to snip each other's cocoon. We come across each other in life's trial and tribulation, and our first instinct is to snip their cocoon, when truly we may be doing a huge disservice, because it's that actual struggle that creates the butterfly. And the 2 different templates of the 6-petaled seed of life and the 7-petaled seed of life, what you'll see here, this is all female, it's all curves.
And it has the Pisces Vesica in it too?
It's all Vesica Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is, and I don't even know the understanding of this, but what they told me, they said, Michael, get up and divide a circle by 7. Well, look at what happens when you multiply a circle by 7. The first arrangement of those 7 circles becomes the 6-petaled seed of life, 1 in the middle, and then 6 around it. And that creates that 6-petaled seed of life that incorporates the seed of life, and it's all Vesica Pisces as well. Someone keeps yelling at me that it's Piscis, but everyone says Pisces, and I'm Pisces. So anyhow, but look what happens when you take those same building blocks of these, instead of the circle being multiplied by 7 and getting the 6-petaled seed of life, instead of 1 in the middle and 6 around, it's 7 around, none in the middle. It's the Ouroboros of the snake eating its own tail. And it's all Vesica Pisces. And it creates a new sacred geometry that we've never even seen before. That's so exciting.
Oh, definitely. And when I look at the through the Mitchell Hedges skull, I see everything in a prism, like blue, white prism of light and yellow reflection. And that's how it communicates with me. And I don't have to touch it to connect, because you just connect to that prism, and through its eyes, you see history, and there's truly 12 other skulls around the planet that haven't been found, similar to it.
Some of them might have been found, but not all 12 for sure.
No.
But I heard that once the 13th is activated, the other 12 aren't even necessary, because the 13th contains all the information of the other 12, plus the galactic connection to bring, because the 13th is almost a fail-safe that to bring mankind into the higher realms, into a golden age.
And do you think the Crystal Mitch's skull is the 13th one?
Yes. First of all, it's the only one of even the other ones that have been found The Mitchell Hedges crystal skull is the only one that has a removable jaw, and it's totally perfectly accurate to a human skull. And they know it's not two different pieces of crystal; it's the exact same piece of crystal. And it's taking nothing away from the other crystal skulls, but the galactic, the granddaddy of all of them that contains everything, is the 13th crystal skull. And the 13th crystal skull is the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. And it's the most notorious, like famous skull out of all of them anyhow. And I feel very fortunate to, to get back to the transmission to Oumuamua. One thing that's happening in the near future is I am being sent a radio right now, which is almost like a glorified ham radio that can transmit and receive. And I'm to go to that Crystal River mound site where they've recently found the Mayan step pyramid. And this is the first place ever that the morning star showed up in the North American continent. Some of the pottery and artifacts removed from those mounds show the Mayan Lamat, which is the morning star. So what's happening is next month in February, I'm going to take that radio and transmit the transmission that me and Richard Hoagland and the team sent out, but the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull is coming there with me. And there's two actual things happening. One will, not to fudge up the science, I'm going to do one transmission with the exact transmission that was sent on Christmas Day. And that'll be one thing. But then, since Jimmy said, when we added your song, the activity went through the charts. He said, what I would like to do in the near future is for you to make your own transmission that has no other input from any other person. You tell me what you want in the transmission, your cymatic image, these crop circles, the song Morning Star. I'm going to make that octaves of F sharp song. I've never tried to make a one-note song. That's interesting. But, and then that's going to be a second attempt with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull at the Mayan Mound Complex here at Crystal River, Florida. Meaning I'm going to have my hand on the crystal skull with a radio transmitter in this one. Who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's coming up in the near future as well. So exciting times.
Definitely. And you're going to get a lot of illuminating information from that experiment.
I believe so as well. So thank you for saying so.
Oh, you're very welcome. Mm-hmm. Well, it's been beautiful having you on the show. You're so blessed. So much beautiful information coming in, and it's explained a lot of things that I've been experiencing by connecting with you. So thank you so much.
Beck, you have lovely energy, and it's nice to meet people of your same tribe. And I know, so it's all good. Thank you for being you and doing what you do, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Blessings.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye-bye.